Chapter 405. This cowhide crane was reared by the mutants. It was very human-like and well-educated. That was why, even though Chinong was only a mortal before his arrival, and even lacked spiritual intelligence, he was not hurt by this strange, spiritual bird. It was just that it had a natural conflict with the red serpent macho. Every day, they fought for fun, and the little Taoist in the past was bullied. Chinong had used the spirit crane saliva to teach Li Ning a lesson because he wanted to punish this feathered beast on behalf of his past self. Unexpectedly, the young man brought by Li Ning was not even as well-educated as a feathered animal. He was born in a wealthy family, and his parents were usually arrogant. When he was outside, he had Wang Changluo, his uncle who was a salt merchant, to back him up. Even the three elites of Qilu and Qilu had to look up to him. This made him arrogant out of nowhere. After being threatened by Chinong, not only did he not get rid of his strange illness, he was scared silly. Seeing the two birds as tall as a human, with large eyes and iron beaks and copper claws that could split mountains and split rocks, it was obvious that they were not to be trifled with. The moment they went up, they shot arrows from their sleeves. Li Ning, who was carrying him, was scared out of his wits. How could Li Ning not know that this stupid young man did not know the severity of the situation? In Jianghu, there were strange beasts reared by the mutants. Their own abilities were equivalent to that of a peerless master swordsman. Each of them also had some innate magical powers. The worst part was that they had strong backers. If you bullied the birds they reared, sooner or later, the backer would come looking for you. Those lonely masters always treated the strange beasts and spiritual birds that accompanied them as their eyes. Most of them had strange tempers, and if they met some strange and fierce ones, they might lose their lives. Luckily, the birds were well educated and did not have any intention of killing them. Li Ning was known as a divine ape, but when a divine ape really came, it would not be able to win against the crane that had been trained by the sword celestial. Its iron beak was like two precious swords that could be opened and closed at will. It flew up and down, making it look like a male ape. Li Ning was also a famous swordsman in Jianghu. Encountering such a powerful, godly swordsman, even though he suffered a lot and was in a sorry state, when the crane suddenly got angry, it used its feet and beak at the same time, clawing and pecking. He was completely defeated. His face was covered in peach blossoms, and his clothes were ragged. If the spirit bird hadn't shown mercy, his situation would have been 10 times more miserable. Chinong shook his head as he watched from the side. Rather than counting on these people to help him vent his anger, he might as well do it himself. Although it was a little embarrassing to bully a beast, it was better than them making a fool of themselves here. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chinong realized that in this world, the difference between immortals was like the difference between heaven and earth. Li Ning's swordsmanship was skillful, and his concealed weapon skill was divine. In Chinong's eyes, his martial arts were not inferior to his subordinates, Morong Bo, Xiao Yuan Shan, Duan Yanqing, and the others. But when faced with the mount of a sword immortal from a different sect, he could only block left and right, but still couldn't win. That spirit bird's beak was like an iron hook, and it had its own way of doing things. It didn't even use its own divine ability, yet it was able to force Li Ning to the point where he couldn't protect himself. How could the difference between the two be explained in just a few sentences? In short, it was just the difference between immortals and mortals. Thinking up to this point, his original intention to test Chuyang had already faded by 80%. But when he saw that Spirit Crane's naughty and mischievous intentions were aroused, it started pecking that youngster's buttocks, and it almost pecked the little worm between his legs a few times, making him cry out in fear. Li Ning also had a bitter expression on his face, and didn't dare to step forward. Suddenly, an evil fire started burning in his heart. Thinking of the few naughty and mischievous things that this vicious big bird had done in the past, he chuckled and flew out from the window. Unexpectedly, when that bird saw him, it actually abandoned its plaything beside it and started pecking at him. Its temperament was very vile. How could Chinong still be afraid of it now? With a clear shout, he waved his hand. An ray of mana froze all the bones in its body. In the secular world, this technique was known as the body-fixing technique, and it was somewhat similar to the upper-level acupoint sealing technique in Jianghu. At this moment, this white crane could only move its eyeballs. Its temperament was intelligent, and it knew that it was meat on someone else's chopping block. Its eyes showed a lot of obedience, which was the opposite of its previous bad behavior, and it acted like a docile and pure bird. How could Chinong let it go so easily? He sneered a few times, and first went to help Li Ning out of his predicament. He was prepared to slowly deal with it later. If he didn't pull out 100 tricks from it, he would be in vain as the avatar of the heavenly demon head apocalypse. He pried open its long beak, and a few drops of pure white crane saliva with a strange fragrance dripped out. Chin-Ong pulled out its tongue and filled 4 small porcelain bottles with the saliva. He handed 1/2 full bottle to Li Ning and said, "This beast's spiritual saliva is very mature. Give it 1 drop every day at noon for 3 consecutive days, and the poison will be cured. The remaining crane saliva is the panacea for detoxification. There aren't many common poisons that it can't cure. If a famous doctor uses it as a medicine guide and blends it with precious medicinal herbs, it can be refined into a precious pill that can purify one's inner force and increase one's cultivation. If taken at a young age, it can help strengthen one's foundation, and your hard work will not be in vain." Li Ning took the crane's saliva, but he didn't have any dissatisfaction in his heart. Even if there was, it would mostly be directed at this stupid young man beside him. He felt exhausted all over, and just wanted to find Wang Changluo to unload the burden on his body. He didn't dare to be the stupid uncle anymore. As for the idea of taking him as a disciple because he was an old friend, he wanted to get as far away from him as possible. He only treated him as a pile of dog shit, and he would never dare to let him touch him again. Li Ning apologized to Chinong and was about to go back to tidy up his exhausted body and mind. But when he saw Wang Ming's shifty eyes, he knew that he was going to cause trouble again. Just as the thought of tying him up rose in his mind, Wang Ming quickly knelt at Chanang's feet and shouted, "I, Wang Ming, am willing to become the disciple of an immortal and learn spells. I hope that immortal Qin Quan will accept me." When he said that, Li Ning and Chinong, who were beside him, had the same thought. This kid is really the best of the best. He went from arrogant to respectful, and changed his attitude so quickly. Does he really think that all immortals are goldfish with a memory of only 6 seconds? Even if he's begging someone, his tone is still saying that I'm giving you face by worshipping you. Hurry up and agree. Li Ning suddenly felt his right hand itch, and he just wanted to hit him. At this time, the young man suddenly remembered that Li Ning was still here, so he turned his head and said with a serious expression, "Uncle Li, my uncle wants me to worship you as my master, but I admire the path of immortals and don't want to go to the mortal world anymore. Please don't make things difficult for me." Li Ning was so angry that he almost laughed. He waved his hand and wanted to leave, but he was a kind person after all. He thought that he still had the elixir that the young man wanted, and if he left, he would inevitably come looking for him again to disgust him. So he forced himself to control himself and watched coldly from the side. The more the young man spoke, the more determined he became. He actually continued, "My parents are old, and I hope that Uncle Li can tell my uncle that I'm going to seek Tao with an immortal and no longer care about worldly affairs. I also hope that he can help me take care of my parents. I, Wang Ming, will definitely repay you in the future." He glanced at Chinong and said directly, "My heart to seek Tao is as firm as iron and stone. Even my parents and relatives can't hold me back." When he finished, he turned his head back and said loudly, "I've made up my mind. Uncle Li, don't try to persuade me any more." Chinong, who was at the side, pinched off a feather from the spirit crane. Looking at the young man's flapping little wings and pure eyes, he thought to himself, "Is he showing his determination to me?" Li Ning only wanted to laugh. He only felt that there were countless complaints in his heart. Although he didn't know what they meant, the feeling was the same. If it was a normal young man, he could teach him a lesson or two for the sake of his friend. But facing this stupid young man, he really didn't have the strength to complain. There were countless words rolling in his heart. "Mo," said, "you want us to take care of your own parents? How shameless! There are no unfilial immortals in the world. What's wrong with your brain that you think people will accept you? You don't even care about your parents. What kind of revenge do we want from you? You said that your father is the only son of the 9 branches. Have you eaten up filial piety?" In the end, thousands of words were condensed into 2 words, hee. He learned the meaning of hee without a teacher. Many thoughts flashed through Chin Ang's mind in an instant. If I met such a talented person in other worlds, I would definitely give him an unparalleled opportunity so that he would understand the principle of the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold, and there is no such thing as a free lunch falling from the sky. I have 1,200 copies of extreme biochemical experiment plans in my pocket. Each of them is brilliant and the quantity is extraordinary. I guarantee that I'll make him die an unprecedented death. However, I'm playing the role of a righteous cultivator in this world. It's not appropriate for me to play such games. Why don't I give you a set meal of the flying Yeksha, drought demon, ghost, and red-eyed zombie of the Panga clan? That will be the fulfillment of our fate. Chapter 406. If they were in another world, Chun Ong would have 100 ways to toy with this brat to death. But now he was not a local, and he was wearing the shell of a righteous senior, so he could not be so obvious. Of course, he was not prepared to let this brat go. If he rejected him flatly, wouldn't it be letting him off easy? He had to take him in as his subordinate so he could slowly deal with him. Of course, this kind of idiot would go out to make a living and get involved in an entanglement of karma. 9 out of 10 of them would be sent home lying down. But again, Chinong was not his father, so how could he teach him how to be a person? It was better to let him experience it himself in the future. Cough, cough. Chinong cleared his throat. Good, you have such a heart of Tao, so you can be considered a seed of Tao cultivation. It's just that techniques are not easily passed on. Even if your foundation is excellent and a beam of spiritual light spurts out from the top of your head, and you are a genius in Tao cultivation, you still can't avoid trials and tribulations. Next to him, Lin Ning did his best to restrain himself. He could naturally see that Chanong was purely joking, but considering Wang Ming's eccentric personality and the fact that he would almost certainly treat his good intentions as malicious intent, he naturally wouldn't do something that would be strenuous and unrewarding. And Wang Ming was naturally overjoyed, saying, "Master, I am not afraid of this kind of test." "Don't call me master." Chinong stopped him. "You are such a fine jade, and you will definitely have greater opportunities in the future. How can I ruin your future? I appreciate your aptitude, and I will lend you a hand. Please don't take me as your master." Wang Ming was originally a little unwilling to take him as his master. He thought, actually, this person may not have any skills. My aptitude is more than 100 times higher than his, so of course it would be easy to beat him. At least he has some self-awareness. If I really take him as my master, and my ability surpass him by 100 times in the future, wouldn't it be too shameful for him? When he looked at Chenong again, there was a little bit of contempt in his eyes. Li Ning almost buried his face in his hands, so ashamed that he did not dare to show his face. This kind of weirdo, almost if he was his disciple, it would be better to beat him to death. He didn't want to embarrass his sect. But Chenong was still smiling as he said to him, "My talent and learning are shallow. Among the 360 Tao, I have only learned 11 or 12 unorthodox methods. One of them is called the divine path of incense, gathering the thoughts of all living beings, herding the lambs of the world. There are 4 sorrow, wisdom, action, and wish, all of which can be cultivated to fruition. Are you willing to learn?" Wang Ming thought, The best techniques in the stories are all ways to achieve immortality. If I can achieve immortality, I can bring my whole family and my future wives, concubines, and children to live forever. Then my immortal bones won't be in vain. If you want to learn, then learn the best method. Otherwise, what's the point of learning like him? He asked, "Can I achieve immortality this way?" Chen Ong shook his head and said, "It's just like daughter threads climbing ivy. Other people's ancestral graves are like flowers in the mirror and the moon in the water. In the end, it's hard to avoid disaster." Wang Ming shook his head and said, "Then I won't learn." Chunong said again, "Then how about I teach you the method of plucking human cauldrons, harmonizing yin and yang, and achieving bliss together?" Wang Ming's eyes were full of interest, but he was someone who had read stories after all, and knew that this was a test. Besides, if he could achieve the Tao of immortality, he would have a lot of time to learn these things in the future. He quickly shook his head and said, "It's not the right way, I won't learn." Chun Ong laughed even more happily. He nodded and said, "You are worth teaching. If you go astray, it's hard to avoid the end of our fate." His words made Wang Ming even more complacent, and he let down his guard more and more. He heard Chun Ong continue to say, "The way of external alchemy by burning fire, using herbs and spirit herbs on the outside, and using lead and mercury on the inside, combining heaven, earth, and man. Are you willing to learn?" Wang Ming fell into the trap and shook his head reflexively. "I won't learn anything that can't achieve immortality." Hearing this, Chun Ong pretended to be angry and sneered. "You won't learn this. Won't learn that won't learn? Then forget it." After saying this, he waved his sleeves and left with the immobile spirit crane. Before he left, he pointed at Wang Ming's feet. Wang Ming wanted to chase after him, but he fell 3 times in a row and couldn't move his feet. He could only watch as Chun Ong swaggered away and said in a daze, "Why didn't he follow the routine? Why didn't he follow the routine?" Returning to the main hall and sealing the doors and windows, Chun Ong turned back and sneered at the spirit crane. The spirit crane's eyes were pure and kind, as if what happened in the past didn't happen. But Chun Ong was not moved at all. He sneered and said, "What? The snake that bullied me in the past was jubilant, and now you're acting like this? If I don't teach you a lesson, how will you remember that a snake with a master can't be bullied?" He glanced at the spirit crane's well-groomed feathers, and then at Mo Cho, who was curled up at his feet, feeling wronged. He immediately revealed a smile that made the spirit crane tremble. After a short while, Li Ning was surprised to see a white crane with messy feathers, with only 1/10 of its feathers left, soar into the sky from the main hall. It circled above Shixia Temple and cried sadly. It sounded very wronged. After circling for a long time, it flew toward Shixia Mountain with hatred, crying nonstop along the way. It was heartbreaking to hear it. No one knew where it went to get help. Chun Ong did all this to form some ties with some key people in this world, so that he would have a reason to interfere in May's plan in the future. Now that the chess pieces were in place, he immersed himself in the research and conclusion of this world's natural laws. There were 3 big problems in this world that he urgently wanted to solve. First, in the absence of reproductive isolation, the creation of living things, and the mystery of life, this kind of problem related to the Tao of creation. Second, the problem of the evil Qi having reached the uniqueness of this universe. Third, the Earth axis magnetism, the relationship between the blessed enclave and the structure of the planet, the study of the planet in Shushan, and the analysis of space. In a situation where there was no way to build a professional laboratory, Chun Ong found a scientific method that was completely different from the scientific and technological universe. The way to prove the Tao by magical treasures in general was to give up all the specific functions of magical treasures and walk towards the path of using magical treasures to evolve the laws of nature, the Tao of heaven, and peep into the path of Tao. Chun Ong suspected that someone in this world had already tried this path, such as a very suspicious 9 condensation cauldron. The innate chi embryo inside was obviously a treasure that someone had refined to simulate the evolution of the world and peep into the Tao. Refining treasures is like refining people. Refining treasures is like cultivation. Chenong sighed. If one day I can refine an immortal, the basic cultivation of this world will basically be no secret to me. If I can refine a planet, most of Shushan's secrets will be no secret to me. First, I will set a small goal for myself. For example, I will refine Mars into a planet like Shushan's Earth. Another example, I will refine a celestial immortal from the soil. Where is he? If you have a goal, you might as well experiment when you're looking for the space of the Master God. Under the premise that you don't cause a big mess. Chapter 407. There was no day or moon in the cultivation world, and one did not know the years of winter and summer. Chen On only used the everlasting lamp flame in his hand to slightly test the method of creating vitality, and became familiar with the principles of true fire and true water. Outside the main hall, the moon was already in the middle of the sky, and according to the time it was the third watch of the night. But the stupid teenager Wang Ming tossed and turned restlessly after he went back, feeling so depressed that he couldn't fall asleep. Li Ning gave him the elixir early on, but he just treated him as a stinky dog shit and refused to talk to him anymore. This teenager was also open-minded and didn't take it to heart. It was just that Chun Ang's teasing at noon made him very depressed. Now all he wanted to do was to learn spells and seek immortality. In the middle of the night, he got up a few times to lament endlessly, feeling a little sorry for himself. His body was filled with a sour and rotten aura that no one appreciated his talent. He thought too much in his mind and suddenly came back to his senses. He suddenly thought, the immortals have said that the Dharma is not easily passed down, and he wants to give me another test. Who said that this round of questioning is not a test? After all, magic cannot be taught to 6 ears. Uncle Li Ning was next to me during the day. Even if the immortal taught me the way of immortality, it was quite inconvenient. Before he left, he threw me 3 times. Could it be that he was reminding me to come back at midnight? Thinking of this, he didn't feel sleepy at all. Now he was hanging around the door of the main hall where Chenong lived. Until midnight, he saw the light in the main hall where Chenong lived was extinguished. From afar, he saw the window at the back of the main hall was opened, and a stream of light shot up to the sky and went to the depths of Chisha Mountain. The stupid teenager was confused, shivering in the cold autumn wind, and shouted in the direction of the stream of light, "Immortal Master! Immortal Master! Master!" But there was no reply. "Didn't we say to meet at midnight?" The teenager said in a resentful tone. This time he was frozen for half the night, and his body was very uncomfortable. Such an encounter made the teenager almost cry. His heart was half resentful and half sad. Wang Ming slapped the door of the hall, but he heard an empty sound on the door. He seemed to have triggered some kind of inspiration, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, that Taoist priest has already left, and from the looks of it, he won't be coming back anytime soon. Doesn't that mean that there's only one big snake in this hall now? Normally, Wang Ming wouldn't have the guts to offend a Mo Cho, but right now he happened to have a bottle of spirit crane saliva that could restrain the scarlet serpent's venom. Li Ning hated him so much that he didn't even keep the spirit medicine for himself and gave him half the bottle of spirit crane saliva. If I can find the heavenly tone that the Taoist priest did with my talent, would I still need to listen to him? I expect that by the time he finds me, my spells and divine abilities will have already surpassed his. Why would I still be afraid of him? With a wicked heart, Wang Ming went around to the back of the hall and went in through the window that Chenong had opened. In the pitch-black hall, there was only one eternal lamp on the 3 pure ones table. Ma Cho was sitting on the table, and her bright red scales looked like they were flowing with blood under the dim light. Wang Ming plucked up his courage and took out the porcelain bottle that contained the saliva of the spirit crane. He poured out half of the bottle and smeared it on a long stick that he had found at random. Apart from the stack of Taoist books on the table, there were only 3 things: a jade tablet with ancient characters inscribed on it, a long sword shaped like a long feather, and an unknown black glass bead. Emo Cho, the scarlet serpent, was sitting on the side and only lazily slid down when Wang Ming drove him away with a stick smeared with spirit crane saliva. Wang Ming's heart was beating fast, and his breathing was rapid. He hurriedly rummaged through the books, and found that the Taoist books left by Chinong were all Taoist books that could be bought on the market. He held the three things in his arms and fled the hall without looking back. Emo Cho just looked at him like he was an idiot, watching him leave, and then returned to the table. Of course, if someone came this time, they would have to face a fierce and terrible spirit beast. Chen Ong stood on the green sharp rock of Qixia Mountain, releasing the everlasting lamp flame to refine the real fire of the sun under the moonlight. Feeling that the prohibition he had left was touched, he showed a smile of understanding. The everlasting lamp flame in the endless moonlight of Qixia Mountain polished away the restlessness of absorbing the real fire of the sun during the day, and once again restored the gentle and clean Taoist nature of the true spirit. Chinong put it back into his dantian. Then he spat out a roll of Milky Way Dharma power and slowly refined it in the moonlight, improving its nature. At the same time, the moonlight and the Milky Way Dharma power intertwined and purified, bringing with it wisps of void, spiritual qi, and the power of the stars, sprinkling it on Qixia Mountain again. The vegetation on the mountain was lush and lush, bathing in the moonlight of the Milky Way and nourishing the land veins. In Qixia Temple, the sloppy monk was meditating in the wing room. When the moonlight shone on him from the window, a man with golden skin and jade-like bones, with a clear glaze light flowing all over his body, was sitting under the moonlight without a trace of sloppiness. The moonlight shone on the glazed body, making the monk look solemn. The glazed body of the monk smiled and looked at the moonlight shining on the whole mountain outside the window. He cupped his hands and praised. Taoism follows nature, the unity of heaven and man. Fellow Taoist, you have extracted the essence of heaven and earth without harming all creatures, creating yourself and all living beings. You are indeed the orthodox, mystic door, the direct descendant of the Great Way. In the moonlight, the Milky Way Dharma power that flowed on the whole Qixia Mountain carefully combed the qi of heaven and earth, the land veins and the water veins of this beautiful, blessed land, calmly dispelling the yin qi and bad luck in the land veins. Like a stream, it silently nourished all living things in this world and promoted the circulation of the land veins. With this one night's work, this magnificent scenery of Qixia Mountain would not have the possibility of withering for the next 30 years. When the sun rose in the east and Chen Ong finished collecting the purple gas, the Milky Way Dharma power appeared again. Drops of moonlight clear water seeped out of the Milky Way and were collected by Chinong in a jade bottle that was refined with some restrictions. He shook it, and the bottle was as light as a feather, but the quality of the jade became clearer. This was the lunar true water, one of the 7 great true waters in the world. It was bright and clear, pure and clean, and its nature was the cleanest. After all, it was formed by the power of moonlight and lunar true water, and it had the virtue of being light and gentle. It was not as heavy as the Tiani true water, which was one of the 7 great true waters in the world, and a drop of it would become a lake or river. White sand also fell from the Milky Way like mist and dew, and was collected by Chinong. This was the milk of Earth Essence Stone, which was best at nourishing vital qi, making up for congenital deficiencies and suppressing inner demons. It could also create wood elemental natural treasures and accelerate the growth of plants. It had endless magical uses, although there were drops of lunar true water and slightly more milk of Earth Essence Stone. There were only about 20 drops. It did not seem like a lot, but if the sloppy old monk in Qixia Mountain saw it, he would probably be shocked, and he would ask Chinong for some. This kind of treasure was extremely difficult to create, and after hundreds of years of hard work, one could only collect 3 to 5 drops. How could one obtain so many in one night like Chenong? The lunar true water had to be extracted from the moonlight with vital qi. If a cultivator or an individual immortal did not have a compatible cultivation method, he could only obtain 2 to 3 drops after 100 years of hard work. The milk of earth essence stone was even rarer. It was also known as the milk of earth essence, and it was the essence of the creation of the earth veins. Only when the earth dragon turned over and the earth veins changed drastically could one have the chance to collect it. The process of obtaining this item was against the harmony of the heavens, and if it was not by coincidence, cultivators would never dare to collect it. Only people like Chenong, who had the supernatural power of the Milky Way and was innately close to the 7 great true waters, and whose magical powers were not inferior to the true disciples of the heaven sanctum, could collect the lunar true water from the moonlight so easily. Chapter 408. Wang Ming carried the things he had stolen from the main hall and hurried out of the monastery. But as soon as he reached the courtyard where Li Ning and the others were, he saw his uncle, Wang Changluo, standing at the door, waiting for him with a gloomy face. Seeing him walk over, Wang Changluo scolded him right to his face. "Wang Ming, you ungrateful thing! How many good words did I say and how many favors did I ask for in order to let you become Li Ning's disciple? Your uncle Li Ning. As the head of the 3 heroes of Qilu, how many people can't learn his martial arts, even if they want to? You evil creature, you don't know what's good for you. If it weren't for your father's face, I wouldn't even bother with a piece of trash like you." Wang Changluo waved his sleeves angrily and shouted, "Go apologize to Senior Li. If you dare to say a word of disobedience, I'll pretend that I never had you as my nephew." Wang Ming's heart was like an overturned jar of vinegar, who knew how much bitterness and grievance he had felt at the same time. With a red face, he stiffened his neck and said, "I'm a seed of cultivation. I don't want to learn the tricks of Jianghu." Wang Changluo was so angry that he almost wanted to kick the kid to death. Because of his relationship with his father, he didn't do it, but he also didn't want to pay attention to him. So he waved his hand and said, "Get out! I'll pretend that I never had you as my nephew." His words were said out of anger, but he didn't expect it to anger the kid. Wang Ming sneered and said, "Fine, get out. Life is full of ups and downs. Don't look down on me because I'm young and poor. I, Wang Ming, will definitely achieve something in the future. At that time, even if you don't treat me as your nephew, I'll still call you uncle. Uncle, we'll meet again if fate allows it." With that, he waved his hand and left. Wang Ming had stolen Chenang's hidden treasure, so he didn't dare to stay here anymore. His uncle driving him away was just what he wanted. Besides, he was also angry. His uncle looked down on him, and Li Ning's accusation, in the eyes of this inexperienced youth, was really the most grievous thing in the world. It was as if he had been deserted by everyone and suffered a terrible blow. On one hand, he was afraid that Chenong would return, and on the other hand, he was filled with grief and indignation. The young man's legs were strong, and he only felt tired after running for 2 hours. At this time, he was already quite a distance away from Sunset Perch Monastery. He staggered along the mountain path, and when he turned back to check what was going on behind him, he did not see a low stump. He tripped and fell to the ground, scraping his hands. Wang Ming heard a crisp sound coming from his chest. He became anxious and hurriedly took out the thing hidden in his chest. The long feather sword was sharp but very soft. He wrapped it around his waist as a flexible sword, but the black glazed bead and the jade pendant on his chest couldn't avoid being hit. When Wang Ming took them out, the jade pendant had already been broken into 2 pieces. Holding the jade tablet that was broken into 2, Wang Ming was anxious and annoyed in his heart. Thinking of the supercilious looks and grievances he had endured these past few days, he couldn't help but burst into tears. His bloody hands held the 2 pieces of the jade tablet, and immediately the blood on the jade tablet seeped into the jade, gradually emitting a faint brilliance. An old voice rang in Wang Ming's mind. First came Hong Jun, Then came heaven, and Lord of Apocalypse was still ahead, before the three religions imparting Dharma assembly, the first immortal after the creation of the world. It has been 1,800 yuanwees since Lord of Apocalypse left me behind. Kid, was it you who woke me up? Wang Ming turned pale with fright and asked in a trembling voice, Who are you? Who are you to the Taoist priest of Sunset Perch Monastery? I'm not a human being. I'm a lotus seed of the green lotus of fate, plucked by Lord of Apocalypse when the world was created. Because perfected Master Pango ended my fate by creating the world. I'm a dead object, not a human being. After Lord of Apocalypse left this universe, he left me behind as a fated chance. Kid, are you the fated one? The old voice asked. Yes, it's me. Although Wang Ming still had some doubts, how could he refuse? He answered ecstatically, No, you're not. The voice of the lotus seed of fate was like a bucket of cold water being poured over his head. Wang Ming shouted excitedly, How can I not be? You're not even an immortal. So how can you be considered the fated one? Immortal? Something as stupid as wood and stone can also be considered human? Let me tell you, kid, things that haven't formed their primordial spirits and have limited lifespans aren't considered humans to us. You'll die of old age when I take a nap, and you want me to treat you as a human? These words not only didn't make Wang Ming give up, but also made him excited. Anyone below an immortal wasn't considered a human. What an amazing fated chance this was. He immediately used all his skills to strike up a conversation with the lotus seed of fate, saying all sorts of nice things to make it recognize him as a human and have some fated chances. Before you become an immortal, don't even think about ordering me around. You won't be able to touch the Great Path immortal records and primordial spirit treasures left behind by Lord of Apocalypse. Since you were the first to find me after 1,800 yuanhui, I can give you some fated chances. If you have the aptitude, you can shed your mortal body and obtain the immortal records. Then you can refine me. Otherwise, after you die of old age, I'll fly away on my own to find the fated one. Naturally, Wang Ming said all sorts of nice things to appease the arrogant lotus seed of fate. He had never been so respectful to his father. He carefully probed, Creation, is your original form this jade pendant? The fate creation boy sneered. My original form was not damaged or destroyed even after the great tribulation of creation. How could it be this stupid thing? Look carefully. My original form is a jade-colored lotus seed, the first treasure in the chaos, the white jade lotus seed of the green lotus of fate. I was born as a primordial fiend god. If I hadn't been envied by the heavens and ended my life, I would have been one of the three pure ones. Wang Ming was so shocked by its origin that he became dizzy. He searched more and more carefully and finally found a lotus seed with the same color and luster in the middle of the broken jade pendant. Seeing the lotus seed disappear in his hand, Wang Ming asked nervously, Creation, Creation, are you still there? Yes, Creation said coldly. Seeing that it did not want to pay attention to him, Wang Ming finally let down his guard. Since this thing of unknown origin looked down on him, it was unlikely that it was specially used to harm him. Besides, he was just a mortal. How could he be worthy of being schemed against by an expert of that level? As for Chenong, he did not think that Chenong had such an ability at all. Creation, I want to become an immortal and enter the Tao. Are there any secret manuals of cultivation methods? The cultivation methods, I know, require one to be an immortal at least. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Look for it in this world. According to my calculations, your fated chance is on the wall of the Flower Rain Cave at the White Sun Cliff of the Wind Cave Mountain. There are 364 drawings of human figures in different postures left by the ancient immortal by Yang. It is also known as the White Sun illustration. It is the first method for cultivators in this world to lay their foundation. At this moment, Wang Ming was wild with joy. He hurriedly asked, Where is the Wind Cave Mountain? Don't be in such a hurry. Apart from having some fate with me, your fate is too shallow. You can't afford such a fortuitous encounter. If you rely on my help to go there, your fate will be shallow. You will first trigger an external tribulation and attract the attention of unorthodox demons. It will be a narrow escape. If you want to have fate with a mortal Baiyang, you must first. Chapter 409. Chun Ong controlled Fate Creation Boy from afar, and in an instant he had set up endless training for Wang Ming, the stupid boy. He had to make sure that he would form a predestined relationship with a mortal Baiyang before he arrived at Mount Fengdong. Although the immortals of this world favored the reincarnations of old friends or the righteous cultivators who had been cultivating for generations, it did not exclude the predestined ones from obtaining the orthodoxy. As for whether Wang Ming was a fated person or not, even if he wasn't, Chun Ong had countless means to make him one. It was nothing more than a more tortuous process, but he wasn't the one who would be tormented, so he didn't care at all. As usual, Chun Ong used the true fire of the sun, extracted from the morning sunlight, to temper the flame of the everlasting lamp, then transformed into a rainbow and returned to the Dawn Perch monastery. Just as Li Ning and the others were bidding farewell to him, he saw them out of the monastery. On the way, he saw Wang Changluo looking at him strangely. After thinking for a moment, he understood that Wang Changluo had already guessed what Wang Ming had done. After all, he was a great salt merchant who traveled extensively. Wang Ming had also revealed many flaws. When he went back and thought about it, he would be able to figure it out. It was just that he played dumb in front of Chun Ong, and Chun Ong was happy to see him play dumb. Anyway, the one who would suffer in the future would not be Chun Ong. It was already past the best time for cultivation. The chi of heaven and earth had turned from its tranquility in the morning to its restlessness in the afternoon. Coincidentally, the sloppy monk had just finished his morning ritual and was sweeping the courtyard. When he saw Chun Ong, he smiled and said, "Yesterday, you plucked the feathers of Priest Meng's beloved bird. That fellow has an honest and straightforward personality. I'm afraid he won't let you go. Even if he wants to keep the peace, I won't let him. He has been harming the bird and harming the snake for 10 years. Before my spiritual sense recovered, I couldn't argue with him. Now don't tell me I'm going to let it go. How can there be such a good thing?" Chun Ong sneered. "Sigh." The sloppy monk sighed and said, "Why is there a need to fight based on personal feelings? Fate is a wonderful thing that cannot be described with words. The wind rises at the end of the green duckweed, and the tribulations appear at the tip of a hair. We Taoists are not plants or rocks. If we are not moved by emotions, how can we make friends with fellow Taoists in the world? If that Taoist Meng is a fellow Taoist who is fated to be my fellow Taoist, then I will naturally be able to turn an enemy into a friend, allowing me to be fortunate enough to meet a fellow Taoist. If he is an enemy from my previous life, then I will be able to face the calamity and fight to see who is stronger and who is stronger." Chun Ong didn't care at all. The sloppy monk said bitterly, "Fine, never mind. In any case, I have some friendship with the two of you. When the time comes, I will mediate between the two of you so that there won't be any bad karma in this world. The accumulation of evil causes and evil retribution is the fate of the world. If it wasn't for fellow Taoist primordial chaos being too stubborn and having a mix of good and bad people in his sect, he wouldn't have ended up with a Mei. Stay upright and eliminate all evil." Chun Ong said faintly, "How can we lose the aspiration of our generation's swordsmen?" The sloppy monk saw that it was inappropriate for the two of them to stand in the courtyard, so he invited Chun Ong to his room and served him some wild tea. Even though the two of them were old acquaintances, Chun Ang's primordial spirit had yet to return to its original position at that time. His mind was clouded, so they had some friendship. However, they had never talked to each other. Today, they slowly discussed the essentials of cultivation and Dharma access. It was only then that Chun Ong found out that the sloppy monk's Dharma name was Jingming. He used to be a monk in the nearby Shixia temple. Later on, because the monks in the temple fought for power, he was chased out of the temple. The old Taoist of Shishya Temple had some friendship with him, so he invited him to stay here as a guest. It was funny that the entire Shishya Temple was a group of ordinary monks, and they actually chased out the only one with cultivation, Jingming. However, this discussion of Tao allowed Chinong to see through Jingming's background. He knew that Jingming worshipped the medicine master Buddha of the East. He cultivated the pure glaze sun and moonlight Buddha's Dharmakaya, which emphasized purity and untainted by colored glaze. Unfortunately, it was not compatible with Jingming's temperament, which hindered his ascension. Jingming had an interesting temperament. He was not like most of the Vedanta of Buddhism in this world, who were profound and dull. Instead, he was somewhat similar to the monk Ji Jian, who was lazy and sloppy, but he cultivated the pure glaze sun and moonlight Buddha's Dharmakaya. Chun Ong thought about how Jingming took care of his descended body when he was in ignorance, so he changed the topic and said, "Before my telegnosis ability recovered, I have always been under your care. I have nothing to repay you for. Yesterday, I refined some Tayin real water, which is suitable for your pure glaze sun and moonlight Buddha's Dharmakaya. Just accept it." Naturally, Jingming knew about the reputation of the 7 great true water in the universe. However, the 7 great true water was very precious. It could only be harvested by cultivators with compatible skills with the primordial spirit and mana. There was a box of Tiani real water left by Tiani Jinmu in the East Cesian Palace. It attracted the attention of many masters from both good and evil, who wanted a few drops to transform their own disasters. Not to mention this kind of true water that was suitable for one's Dharmakaya. Even if Jingming used the magic weapon that he had painstakingly made for 300 years to exchange for it, he might not be able to move others. Most magic weapons that were refined by others were not suitable for one's Dharmakaya. How could it be as useful as this kind of inborn true water with endless magical effects? If Jingming was willing to give up 100 years of hard work, he might be able to refine a few drops. However, all cultivators regarded their cultivation as their eyes. Who would waste their own cultivation for external resources? Jingming thought about it, but he could not refuse in the end. He could only accept it shamelessly and said, "My primordial spirit has been restless these few years. I think I was too impatient when I used the sun's true fire to refine my Dharmakaya. I lost my calm and peaceful nature. My pure glazed Dharmakaya's fire nature is restless. I thought I would have to go to the eye of the sea for 100 years and use the water of harmony to survive the fire disaster. However, with the Tayin true water that you gave me, I will be able to get rid of my fire nature and return to peace. I'm relying on you to survive this disaster again." Jingming put his palms together and praised. After this, the two of them became even closer. They could talk about some of the more secretive matters. Chun Ong learned many things about the cultivation world in recent years from monk Jingming. Jingming also gave him many spirit medicines that he had picked in Chisha Mountain. As they were chatting happily, Chinong had a thought. He knew that something related to him had happened, so he closed his eyes and began to calculate. "Did you calculate something?" Jingming asked with concern. Chin Ong shook his head and said, "It's nothing. It's just some worries in this life. Speaking of which, it has something to do with you." After Li Ning and the others left Chisha Temple, they went down the mountain. On the way, they passed by the Jade Cloud Pavilion on Chisha Tiger Peak. Li Ning and his brothers were masters of the inner force and had light feet. However, most of them were ordinary people. Wang Changluo, the master who lived like a prince, was also there. They were exhausted and had to rest in the pavilion. While Li Ning was catching his breath, he saw another group of people staggering up the mountain. It was almost noon, and just as they were about to reach the Bune Pavilion, he heard someone wailing, "Quick, quick, put me down on the side. I'm going to die again." A small golden bamboo sedan was unloaded. A pale man with a face full of rashes crawled out of the sedan. When he saw Li Ning and the others, he scolded, Why are there still people here? Hurry up and chase them down. An old man beside him quickly pulled him back and whispered into his ear, Squire Jia, you can't provoke them. Some of the masters in the martial world have extraordinary identities. Then the commentator, whose face was covered in rashes, gasped for breath and said nothing more. The old man came up to apologize to Li Ning and the others. Wang Chanluo was a big businessman. Along the way, he had the thought of making money by being friendly. He did not want to cause trouble, so he did not argue. However, Li Ning stared at the Squire Jia and vaguely thought of something. At noon, the Squire Jia suddenly screamed. His whole body was red as if he was being burned. He rolled on the ground in pain and shouted, Kill me! I won't let that brat go. I want his whole family to die. It hurts so much. He was in so much pain that the muscles on his face trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, Kill him! You must skin that snake for me. I want to eat his flesh and sleep on his skin. Chapter 410. The rash on his body feels like it's on fire. This is the red serpent's poison that Wang Ming was poisoned with. Li Ning thought to himself, from his cries of pain, it seems to have something to do with Xixia Monastery. I'm afraid he was injured by the Taoist snake. That Xie Yuanwei doesn't look like a good person. Even though the Taoist knows some magic, I still have to be careful. The Taoist of Xixia Monastery has given me medicine. Since I know about this, I can't just stand by and do nothing. Li Ning made up his mind. He told Wang Chanluo and took a detour to avoid the people Xie Yuanwei brought with him. He then used his movement technique to head towards Xixia Monastery. Li Ning's lightness kung fu was extremely fast. The group of people walked for half a day before he finished in an instant. He pushed open the main door of Xixia Monastery and heard someone call out to him, Mr. Li, come here! He went over and saw Chanong sitting opposite the sloppy monk with a smile, leisurely drinking tea. Li Ning immediately told them what he saw. The sloppy monk listened and sighed. That Scholar Xie is a scoundrel in Jinling City at the foot of Xixia Mountain. His family originally had some power, but after he became a scholar, he became more and more lawless. A few days ago, the funeral of the old monastery master gave him a glimpse of the real situation in the monastery, and he had the idea of occupying the monastery. There are many officials and nobles in Jinling City, so he didn't dare to act rashly. But this Xixia monastery is remote and secluded, so he has many bad intentions. That day he came here forcefully and was injured by the red serpent. I was merciful and dispersed his poison. I wanted to punish him and get rid of his bad intentions. I didn't expect him to be so stubborn. Chanong only smiled and said to Li Ning, Come, let's go meet this scholar Xie. Li Ning was stunned and could not help but ask, Young Taoist, aren't you going to wait here for him to come up and expose his bad intentions before punishing him? We cultivators don't have so much time to care about such things. Chanong laughed coldly. If we are like that monk every time with the intention of saving the world, what time do we have to cultivate? This time, I'll show you that not only do cultivators have a compassionate heart, but they also have killing methods. Getting rid of evil is doing good. He's just an evil person in the marketplace. Why do we need to do anything to him? Let's go down and capture his soul. We'll interrogate him carefully. If there's a shred of hope, we'll let this monk slowly enlighten him. If he's wicked beyond redemption, we'll make him pay immediately. The sloppy monk shook his head helplessly. However, Chanong still stood up and led the way down the mountain. Li Ning could only follow. Chun Eng's pace was faster than Li Ning's. In just a short while, he could see the Jade Cloud Pavilion. Li Ning could even hear Scholar Jia's snort. Chun Ong arrived so quickly that no one in the pavilion had time to react. Zhou Chun saw him stand up in surprise. It was not until Chun Ong stepped into the pavilion with an indifferent expression that Xie Xiucai, who had come to seek revenge, regained his senses in a daze. His entire body was swollen, and when he saw Chunong standing in front of him, he could not recognize him. "It's you!" When he recognized the young Taoist who had caused him to be in a life-or-death situation, he immediately lost his reason in anger. He shouted, "What are you all standing there for? Quickly take him down." "Who dares?" Zhou Chun saw this and also drew his knife. Scholar Jie's men did not know how powerful he was. They raised their weapons and were about to charge forward and press down the young Taoist, who did not seem to have any martial arts for their master to deal with. Scholar Jie was not an ordinary tyrant. The friends he had made were all famous solitary bandits in the martial world. They all came together to support him and avenge him. Chin'ong glanced at them. There were actually 2 bandits who had hidden swordsmanship. They had also cultivated a bit of magic power, but at best they could only cast some flying sand and stones to catch people off guard. They were not as powerful as Li Ning's hidden weapons. He casually sent out a wave of magic power and froze all of them. Zhou Chun and Scholar Jie were so shocked that they hurriedly stopped talking. They looked at Chin'ong with bewilderment. Scholar Jie squeezed out a smile and said bitterly, "So it's Immortal Senior." This lowly one was blind and offended Immortal Senior. But this lowly one has no evil intentions. It's just a misunderstanding. He had many schemes in his mind. He just wanted to fool the awkward situation in front of him. Unexpectedly, Chin'ong did not pay attention to him. Instead, he used his transcendence energy to bind the souls of the fighters and helpers. He wrapped a black soul with his transcendence energy in front of everyone and began to interrogate them carefully. Whenever someone spoke incoherently or vaguely, he would burn them with the flame of the eternal lantern, roasting them until they screamed in pain and spilled out all the evil deeds of their ancestors for 18 generations. He interrogated them very quickly. As long as he found out that someone had kidnapped them, he would be evil to the bone. After getting the victim's name and address, he would casually wave his hand and scatter their souls before moving on to the next one. In just a short while, there were already 7 to 8 soulless bodies lying on the ground. The people watching felt a chill in their bones. Wang Changluo was so frightened that he hid in the crowd. Not daring to look at Chin'ong, Zhou Chun's eyelids twitched. He was not afraid of Chun'ong killing people like flies. If these people were in his hands, they would be finished with a single slash of his blade. But seeing Chun'ong capture and scatter their souls like they were toys, he instinctively felt uncomfortable. The last one, Scholar Jie, was trembling like a sieve. A foul stench came from his crotch. Li Ning saw it and was so frightened that he peed his pants. Scholar Jie did not wait for Chin'ong to interrogate him. He confessed all the evil deeds he had done. He kowtowed repeatedly and swore to repent sincerely. He also swore many evil oaths to the heavens, crying and shouting that he would repent and do many good deeds to make up for his mistakes. Li Ning could not bear to see him like this. He looked at Chin'ong and said, "Since he has the intention to repent, why don't we spare him this time? If he does evil again in the future, I will take his head without your help." Chin'ong smiled and said that would be for the best. But let me test him first to see if he is truly repentant. He did not wait for Li Ning to reply. He captured Scholar Jie's soul and used some tricks to make him confess to Ketu. Scholar Jie looked weak and useless, but he was actually very vicious. When he said it, Li Ning and Zhou Chun were shocked. If they were not careful, they would also be tricked. Xia Xiucai appeared to be weak and fearful, but in his heart he had already schemed against their families. He wanted to be the first one to eliminate Li Ning and Zhou Chun after they escaped from this disaster. He was afraid that they would monitor his movements and report it back to Chin'ong. He had a few tricks up his sleeves. The women, the children, the elderly, and the young were all in his vicious calculations. Even if their martial arts were 10 or 100 times better than his, they would not be able to escape easily. When he asked again, he hid many other evil deeds. They were all crimes of giving birth to a son that was extremely vicious. Chapter 411. After killing Xieshiotsai, the remaining servants and helpers who did not deserve to die were all handed over by Chenong to Li Ning to deal with. Li Ning was able to control the severity of the punishment. He would either punish them slightly and then let them go, or he would bring them to the authorities. Chenong saw that he had handled the matter well and said, "I still have to thank you for informing me about this matter and helping me end this trouble. I just interrogated those people and found out that many of their victims were killed by them. Please help me take the heads of those bastards and offer them to them, so that their souls in heaven can be comforted and their families can be freed. If there are any who are struggling to make ends meet, please help me out and complete this matter." Hearing this, Li Ning replied solemnly, "I, Li Ning, am duty-bound to help you." Chenong sighed and said, "In the world, Buddhism is particular about karma and forgiveness, but I have always scoffed at it. Repaying evil with good. How do you repay good? If you forgive those heinous people, how can you face the victims that they killed? If you have a merciful heart, you should put the innocent victims first. I only hope that those innocent people can let go of their past suffering and start anew." He raised his head and looked at the corpses on the ground and laughed coldly. "As for these people, they died a worthy death. Happy, happy. If there are any survivors who come to seek revenge, they will first have to eat my sword and their lives will be scattered." His words were cold and deep, but it made Li Ning and the others shiver. They knew that his heart was as cold as steel. Successfully playing the role of a righteous sword immortal who hated evil, Chenong said to Li Ning, "First you told me about the matter, and then you helped me settle my funeral. Even though there were many twists and turns, you did not change your mind. In my previous life, before I entered Taoism, I was a famous martial arts master in the Northern Song dynasty. My martial arts were extraordinary, and people called me Governor Chin. Now I see that you have a good aptitude. Even though you have lost your virginity and can't cultivate, you are old and have lost your destiny to become an immortal, but you can teach me martial arts to punish evil and do good deeds. Let me ask you, are you willing to learn?" When Li Ning heard this, he knew that this was a great opportunity. Although Chenong looked childish and dressed like a young man, his mana was strong, and he knew that he entered Tao in the Song dynasty. He didn't know how many years older than Chenong, but he didn't have any obstacles in his heart. He immediately knelt down in front of Chenong and said, "I am indebted to a mortal elder for thinking highly of me. How could Li Ning dare to refuse? However, I have 2 brothers who swear to share honor and disgrace with me. Please have mercy on me." Although Chenong had no intention of forcing him to become his disciple, Li Ning had been in Jianghu for a long time. How could he not know the difference between a disciple and a fated person? How could he learn the true inheritance if he refused to acknowledge him as his master? At this time, the senior experts were very particular about sections. Many sword immortals of different sects had outstanding aptitudes and physiques, but because they had no fate with the orthodox mystic door, they had no hope of ascending. It was unknown how many lifetimes they had begged before they were accepted into the orthodox mystic door and had a chance of ascending. Many unorthodox experts with strong mana were humiliated by the younger generation of the mystic door with treasures. They cultivated hard, but there was no result. How could a wisp of their soul be freed from the 49 heavenly tribulations? If it was a young and inexperienced hero, he might think that he was fated and miss such an opportunity. However, the 3 heroes of Chilu were experienced. It wasn't that they had never met sword immortals and experts in their lives, but it was already amazing that they were even willing to look up to them. Who would be willing to accept them? On the other hand, Zhou Chun's daughter was taken away by an expert the moment she was born. Li Ning also had someone who calculated that he was fated to have a daughter and decided to take him as a disciple. Now that he saw such an opportunity, even though he had doubts in his heart, he immediately grasped it. If he did not grasp it, how could he not see the burning and envious eyes of the people around him? Chenong nodded and smiled. He raised his hand into the air, and the 3 of them could no longer kneel. He said to the 3 of them, "If I did not interfere, the three of you would still be master and disciple 20 years later. He pointed at Li Ning and said, "You have fate with Buddhism." He then pointed at Zhou Chun and said, "You have fate with Zhuoyun, so by Gu Yi of the three deities of Eastern Sea." Finally, he looked at Yangda and sighed, "You are fated to die young. My Tao techniques cannot be inherited unless one has a pure young body. Therefore, even if you become my disciple, you will only be able to learn some martial arts of the human world. Of course, I will not stop you from pursuing Tao and cultivating. Whether you become my disciple after reincarnation or if you're fated to join another sect, it is up to you. However, if you commit any crimes, don't blame me for punishing you." Chen Ong said to the three of them, "Think about it carefully. If you still want to be my disciple, then follow me." After he finished speaking, he ignored the others and walked up the mountain. Yangda didn't think too much. He looked back at his two sworn brothers and quickly got up to follow. Li Ning was slightly stunned, but he also followed behind. Zhou Chun hesitated the longest, but when he saw his two sworn brothers leaving, he gritted his teeth and followed behind. The three heroes of Qilu and the others may seem insignificant, but they were the key to Amei's prosperity. The three of them had lost their virginity and could not achieve much without reincarnation. However, they had two good daughters. Whether it was Zhou Chun's daughter, Zhou Qingyin, or Li Ning's future daughter, Ling Qiang, they were the key figures of the three heroes and two clouds. They were also the pivot of Chen Ang's plan. Of course, Chen Ong was not afraid of the people of Amei causing trouble. The people of Amei were happy to see Zhou Qingyin become the disciple of the old nun of Cloud Eater. Amei would be even happier if a sword immortal of the righteous path, like him, could become the disciple of the three heroes of Qilu and the three heroes of Qilu. Under the entanglement of karma during the great calamity in the future, they could use today's karma to pull Chen Ong closer to Amei. Chen Ong needed Amei to help him eradicate evil, lock onto the location of the main god's chess pieces, and follow the clues to the main god's network. Amei hoped that during the three sword duels, they would be able to get another strong aid from the righteous path. Both sides were like-minded. Like dry wood meeting a raging fire, they could collude with each other. The three heroes of Qilu and the three heroes of Qilu naturally did not know Chen Ang's plan. Yangda was warned by Chen Ong that he would die tomorrow morning, so he naturally did not dare to give up this fate. He was not like Li Ning and Zhou Chun, who had a way out. He could only wholeheartedly look for Chen Ong to become his disciple, hoping to escape this calamity. Li Ning originally had the intention to become his disciple. He was stunned for a moment because he suddenly heard about the fate of the Sand Gate, and his heart was moved for a moment. Zhou Chun was originally the person who did not want to become Chen Ang's disciple the most, but since his two sworn brothers had already decided, he had to come for the sake of brotherhood. The three of them followed Chen Ong back to Xixia Temple. Chen Ong picked up a stack of hemp paper from the table in the Three Pristines Hall. He pressed on it with his right hand, and a stack of words appeared. There was also an exquisite and beautiful diagram of meridians and acupoints on it. He casually threw it to the eldest of the three heroes, Li Ning, and said, "Before I entered the path of Tao in the Song dynasty, I was also a Jianghu hero. I used medicine, mathematics, and Taoism to enter the path of martial arts. I roamed the world, and all heroes were helpless. My long sword was empty. In my lifetime of martial arts, only medicine, mathematics, and Taoism are the best. I want to choose one person from each of you to teach them." Chapter 412. The three heroes of Qilu did not doubt Qin Rant's words. Qin Rant's supernatural power was better than countless martial arts in the human world. Even Zhou Chun, who was the most suspicious, could not think of a reason for Chen Ong to lie to them. Of course, Chen Ong did not lie to them. In Jianghu during the Northern Song dynasty, his name was indeed terrifying. To say that the heroes were helpless and their swords were empty was an understatement. To be exact, he dominated Jianghu and shocked the martial arts world. His terrifying dominance had cast a shadow over the entire Jianghu for 300 years. Chen Ong only omitted some time and space relationships. For example, the Northern Song dynasty he lived in was not the Northern Song dynasty of this world, and he had never experienced the period from the Northern Song dynasty to the end of the Ming dynasty. But these were not important. They only needed to know these limited facts. So Li Ning and the other two hurriedly replied, "We haven't mastered our skills yet. We don't dare to expect to learn from you. Master, please consider and teach us." Chen Ong shook his head and smiled. "I'm busy with cultivation. I don't have time to play around with those martial arts masters in Jianghu. I'm teaching you the martial arts of the past because I don't want my skills to be lost. It's just a memory. If you can't learn these things, I might as well teach you some shallow martial arts and kick you out of the door." Li Ning and the others came to their senses. They knew that Chen Ong really didn't care about the martial arts of the human world. He didn't want to play around with those kinds of tests. He didn't want his disciples to die. He had to make a solemn oath that if he dared to teach others without permission, he would die with pus all over his body. Only then would he pass on the hidden rules of martial arts. They quickly changed their words and told the truth. Chen Ong asked them to tell him the martial arts they were good at. After listening to them, he thought for a moment and distributed a stack of hemp paper to the three of them. Chen Ong smiled. "The three of you have a foundation in martial arts. Your foundation has been laid. I will teach you according to your talent. Li Ning, you are nicknamed Tongbi Divine Ape. You have arms like an ape and a waist like a bee. Your hands are above your knees. You have the best swordsmanship. You can use all kinds of hidden weapons. I have a set of internal and external fists and palms, which can make up for your weakness of not being good at close combat and fighting barehanded." After speaking, he displayed a set of fist techniques. His arms and legs were like dragons and snakes dancing in the air, exuding a powerful aura. Li Ning's eyesight was profound, and he could tell that this was a set of monkey-form fist techniques. It was many times more profound than his own martial arts. Each and every one of his movements contained the force of 1,000 caddies. Chen Ong practiced it twice and only stopped when he saw that Li Ning had memorized it. Zhou Chun and the other man wanted to turn their heads to avoid arousing suspicion, but they were also martial arts practitioners. After watching the beginning, they forgot to turn their heads and continued watching without blinking. It was only when Chen Ong stopped that they came to their senses. They immediately felt ashamed and did not dare to look at Li Ning directly. Li Ning naturally did not blame his two sworn brothers, but he was not the one who had taught them martial arts. In terms of the rules of the pugilistic world, the two of them had committed the taboo of stealing someone's master. Seriously speaking, it was only right that Chen Ong would kill them now. Therefore, he could only lower his head and beg for mercy on their behalf. Chen Ong shook his head and sighed. "Why do you have to act so bashful? Since I've accepted all of you as my in-name disciples, I will naturally treat all of you equally. There's no reason for me to teach all of you separately. It's just that my martial arts are not something that can be learned by just one of you. Furthermore, your aptitudes and foundations are different. Therefore, I've divided myself into 3 parts, allowing you to inherit the complete inheritance. If you finish learning what I've taught you, you can naturally exchange pointers with each other. I'll only be happy if you can learn all of my skills. But I'll say this first. If you don't even learn your own skills properly and are only greedy and distracted, then you'll have wasted my efforts. Don't tell others that you're my disciples, lest you embarrass yourselves." The 3 of them were filled with gratitude and shock as they clasped their fists and acknowledged. Chen Ong continued. "That set of external martial arts fist technique just now is called Great Sage Chop. It's very different from the fist theories of the current Jianghu. It emphasizes on following one's heart strength and training one's muscles and bones. The last set of internal martial arts palm technique is called Great Strength Vajra Palm. It goes from the outside to the inside and it's complemented by a set of methods to circulate and train qi. Listen to the incantation Qin Ong explained in detail for an hour. He explained the fist theories of Shaolin Temple, the stance training of internal martial arts, and even the parts of Buddhist fist techniques that were related to the philosophy of Buddhism as if they were his family treasures to the three of them. Among them, he talked about the Buddhist scriptures, the thoughts of the Zen sect, and even the natural science of astronomy and geography, as well as modern biological knowledge, such as muscles and bones. Li Ning and the other two were intoxicated as they listened. They admired his knowledge and ability so much that they prostrated themselves before him. Li Ning had never thought that the principles of martial arts could be so clear and complicated. What he had learned in the first half of his life, he had only scratched the surface. It was only after listening to Qin Ang's explanation that he could be considered to have entered the door. Zhou Chun and Yang De were also extremely shocked. The previous doubts in their hearts were now thrown to the back of their minds. They admired Qin Ong wholeheartedly. Only martial arts experts like them could understand the profound knowledge of martial arts behind these martial arts and Qin Ang's inconceivable accumulation of knowledge. Other swordsmen and masters of the path of immortals, even if they had flying swords, could make them respect them, but they could not compare to Qin Ong, who had conquered them in martial arts and made them admire him wholeheartedly. After Qin Ong finished teaching them the palm technique, he also taught Li Ning a hidden weapon technique, Tianluo's cunning way. In the end, he said, "In your hand is an internal heart technique that I carved with my supernatural powers. I have been well versed in medicine, mathematics, Buddhism, and many other kinds of knowledge in my life. After mastering martial arts, I brought forth new ideas from the old and incorporated medicine, mathematics, and Taoism into martial arts. This is the foundation martial art of medicine and martial arts. Synopsis of the Golden Chamber. This martial art is also known as Treatise on Febrile and Miscellaneous Diseases. I borrowed the wonderful theory of Zhang Zhongjing's medical book from the Han Dynasty to create it by incorporating the meridians, yin and yang, the qi of the lungs, and many other medical principles into martial arts. The higher this martial art, the more proficient one is in medicine. Not only can it reverse the yin and yang of the human body with vital qi, causing the enemy to fall ill, but it can also use vital qi to heal the patient. This is the most wonderful use of my martial arts. Now that I'm giving it to you, I hope that you can use it to punish evil and help the people when you travel around the world, saving the suffering of the common people." Qin Ong said emotionally, "Other than that, this also contains a wish of mine. I hope you can help me fulfill it." Li Ning said emotionally, "Please say it, honored master. I will definitely obey. When I created this martial art, I also wanted to help improve my medical skills and spread it to the world so that the people of the world can learn better medical skills. It's a pity that after I entered Taoism, I was far away from the world of mortals, so it was delayed. Now that you want to travel around the world, can you help me spread the medical book behind this martial art to the world and train some doctors who can learn and understand it?" Qin Ong asked. Li Ning's expression was solemn. He nodded respectfully and said, "Disciple will not disappoint honored master. I will help the medical skills to spread far and wide." To be continued. Chapter 413. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Shua, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Chunong turned his head to Yangda and said, "Your nickname is Divine Saber Yangda. You are adept at using a padao and a dart chain. I will teach you a set of Tian Shan plum snapping hands and a set of Tian Shan 6-yang palms. This Tian Shan plum snapping hands consists of 3 paths of palm techniques and 3 paths of grappling techniques, a total of 6 paths of martial arts. Any martial arts technique in the world can be incorporated into this 6 paths snapping hands. As long as you practice diligently, your empty-handed skills will definitely not be inferior to your sworn brothers. If you diligently comprehend these 2 martial arts, it will be enough to benefit you for a lifetime. Immediately he taught him the chant of the Tian Shan plum snapping hand, which was flat and difficult to pronounce. He also taught him the breathing technique to complement the chant, which could be considered as entrusting the martial art of the Ling Jiushan to him. But when it came to bladesmanship, Chinong was a little hesitant. But in the end he still said, "I'm good at swordsmanship. Although I know some principles of bladesmanship, such as the blade of 5 tigers breaking the gate, Azura's world destroyer, and Yin and Yang Tai Chi knife, which can be considered top-notch in Jianghu, it's not as profound as the Tai Chi sword I gave to your eldest brother Li Ning. In the future, you will face a death tribulation. You will need to have amazing abilities to survive it. I have a saber technique that I created when I was possessed by the devil. It is quite demonic. Later on, because I reached the peak of martial arts, I abandoned it. Therefore, I don't have a name for it. I might as well call it demonic saber. I imparted the demonic saber to you in the hope that you can rely on it to survive the death tribulation. Do not be confused by the demonic nature of the saber technique. Just be cautious." Chen Ong imparted the essence of the demonic saber to him. Finally, he reminded him, this saber technique is very powerful and has a deep demonic nature. You will use the person to control the saber, not the saber to control the person. You must remember this. Yangde bowed and said, "Yes, Yangde will not dare to forget Master's words." In the end, Chen Ong imparted to him the divine technique of mathematical martial arts, 6 void circulations, recorded on the hemp paper. He instructed, "This technique comes from the Book of Changes and is based on the path of calculation. Therefore, if you don't know mathematics, there will be many obstacles and heavenly tribulations. Only by mastering mathematics can you master it. Love, go, small, say, Netku." Finally, only the flying crane in the cloud, Zhou Chun, was left. He was the youngest of the 3 heroes of Qilu, and it was purely because of his 2 sworn brothers that he was able to become Qin Eng's disciple. Because he was the youngest, his martial arts skills were also the worst among the 3 heroes. However, his lightness kung fu was the best. He used white silk to make 2 wing-like things and wrapped them around his arms. Even if it was 100 feet high mountain, he could still use the wind to jump up. He saw that Chen Ong was looking at him with a strange expression. He felt a little apprehensive and thought to himself, could it be that Master saw through my unwillingness earlier? I was too paranoid and offended Master. I wonder what punishment I will receive. Chen Ong sighed and said, "Your flying crane in the cloud nickname is not good. In the Song Dynasty, I killed a big rapist, and my nickname Crane in the Cloud is only 1 character away from yours. It's really inauspicious. However, it doesn't matter. You only have this nickname because of the 2 wings on your back. I will teach you a set of lightness kung fu. From now on, you won't have to use these 2 things anymore." After saying that, he taught him a set of body movement technique, the rule of impermanence, and a set of lightness kung fu, the bird crossing technique. The rule of impermanence was a set of body movement technique that was combined with the art of war. When facing the enemy, it was as swift as the wind, as gentle as the forest, as aggressive as the fire, as immovable as the mountain. When attacking, it was as swift as the thunder, as unpredictable as the shadow. It was a top-notch body movement technique that Chanong had created based on the wave-like subtle steps. As for the bird crossing technique, it was a mystical kung fu that Chinong had improved upon in the Tang Dynasty. Then he taught Zhou Chun the secret weapon technique, the heavenly Luo cunning way, and chose a finger technique for him, the joined finger. Finally, he taught Zhou Chun the heaven and earth great shift, a secret art that Chinong had fused with the stars transposition and many other essences of the Taoist scriptures. The heaven and earth great shift was jointly pushed to the 9th level by Fong La and Chinong, speaking of which. It was the most profound martial art that Chinong had ever used. It was even better than the synopsis of the Golden Chamber. After teaching them martial arts, he spent half a day explaining them one by one. In the end, Chinong waved his hand and ignored them. He said to the three elites of Chilu and Chilu, "You've learned a general idea of martial arts, so there's nothing unclear about it anymore. I still need to cultivate and seek the Tao, so I don't have time to deal with you. Go." The three elites of Chilu and Chilu had no choice but to go down the mountain to join the caravan and go to Jinling City. After that, it was a leisurely time. Every day, Chun Ong tempered the everlasting lamp flame, extracted the Tying real water to polish his supernatural power, and concentrated on cultivating. During the day, he only occasionally discussed Tao with the sloppy monk Jingming, or opened a furnace of pills to test his skills. As Chun Ong cultivated his qi activity every day, the sword immortal who lived in seclusion on Mount Qixia also became familiar with his breath. Because of the celestial river's supernatural power, even Mount Qixia was full of spiritual aura. The plants flourished, the hidden vitality sprouted, the earth veins became lively, and even the qi of heaven and earth became lively. All the cultivators on the mountain took advantage of such a good time to cultivate day and night, so as not to cause any trouble. For some reason, Taoist Meng, who raised the cranes, never came to cause trouble for Chinong occasionally. Chinong did some divination, but it was always a difficult divination, indicating that Taoist Meng had something to do and was unable to come out to cause trouble. As for what exactly it was, Chin Ang's research progressed day by day, so he didn't have the time to look into it. In 2 months, Chinong had already rearranged Mount Qixia Temple. He planted herbs in the wastelands of the temple, opened up a few fields, and even asked Jingming Taoists to take care of them, so that he could analyze the properties of herbs, study the creation of spiritual herbs, graft, and even study the cells and genes of the herbs in order to learn these knowledge. He also took the opportunity of picking herbs in the mountains to cut down some trees that had lost their vitality and were at the end of their lives. He used the everlasting lamp to roast them into wood and repaired the entire Sunrise Monastery. He built a few laboratories and refined some crude, experimental magical equipment to assist Chinong in his research. Another morning, an endless Milky Way stretched across the sky, rolling above Mount Qixia. It drew down the violent sun essence from the 9 heavens far away, polishing it in the Milky Way before sprinkling it down again. The sun essence's spiritual qi was already gentle, making the entire mountain flourish. A flame in the Milky Way swallowed the true fire of the sun, releasing a bright light as big as a basket. In a cave abode in the depths of Mount Qixia, a female Taoist priest looked at the Milky Way in a daze. After a long time, she sighed and stroked an ugly crane with messy feathers beside her hand. When the crane saw her like this, it couldn't help but use its iron beak to gently pick at the corner of her clothes, crying out pitifully, its 2 spiritual eyes filled with tears. The female Taoist priest touched the top of the crane's dantian painfully and said, "I know you feel wronged, but that bad guy's mana is strong. I'm not his match. I've trained my mana painstakingly, but it's not even as deep as the mana he cultivated in 2 months. How violent is the sun essence of the 9 heavens to us, the sword immortals of the other sex, the sun essence that hasn't been polished by the astral wind. We have to protect our corporeal body's mana from being worn down by the brutal qi of vitality, but he used it to improve and polish his own mana." Chapter 414. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. TalkNet, providing you with exciting novels to read. Looking at the sad expression on the female immortal's face, the ugly crane meekly rested its head on her thigh and put on a cute and innocent expression, even rubbing its head against her forearm in a fawning manner. "All right, I know you want to comfort me." The female immortal combed its feathers and said, "The Milky Way's mana refines the essence of the sun beyond the sky into a gentle spiritual aura that spreads all over the mountain. Every day I can only borrow its light for 4 hours. I can't waste it, right? Don't lose your temper. Use the essence of the sun and the moon to cultivate, and in the future, you might have a positive outcome." At this point, the female immortal was in a daze again. When the spirit crane saw this, it pretended to be angry and jumped up. It spat in the direction of the rosy clouds' courtyard, shook its butt, and made many ugly moves to amuse her. As expected, the female immortal laughed when she saw its antics. She pointed at its head with her slender finger. "All right, you shameless idiot. Do you want to be teased again?" He plucked your feathers, and you spat Crane's saliva. You did something bad, but you took advantage of him before he awakened his past life to tease him and bully his spirit snake. You are in the wrong, too. This made the ugly crane angry, and it cawed. The female immortal laughed and said, "Of course I'm on your side. If I'm in the wrong, then so be it. If he bullied you, then he bullied me. I'll definitely return the favor in the future." The female immortal leaned on the spirit crane and continued to look at the Milky Way that stretched across the sky. After a long time, she said, "Master Jingming is willing to help me resolve this and be a peacemaker. But why didn't I know about it? Is such a small matter worth making peace? He just wants to use his favor to introduce me to that cultivator from the mystic door, hoping that one day I will have a positive outcome from them. I understand Master's good intentions. For a different sect like us, it's fine if we have a legacy and can cultivate a strong magical power. A lone ghost like me deserves to waste my life and die of old age on the path of immortality, with no hope of ever attaining the true fruit. But I'm not convinced. The unorthodox sects look down on everyone. Even the unorthodox sects look down on themselves. My inner demon is growing and turning into a stubborn feeling. Why should I fawn over those arrogant cultivators of the mystic door?" She even used her womanly charms and risked the reputation of being a wicked demoness who harbored evil intentions in her teacher's mouth. She was destined to be the Devil Star to seduce. At this point, she blushed shyly and said softly, "Seduce the disciples of their righteous sects? Why should I?" The female immortal's faint voice echoed in the cave, carrying a sense of unwillingness and sorrow. When the long river in midair disappeared, the cave abode was once again filled with a faint medicinal fragrance. The female immortal sat cross-legged in the cave abode and carefully controlled the temperature of the fire in the cauldron. When the surging spiritual chi in the cauldron quietened down again, the female immortal heaved a long sigh of relief and relaxed. She looked at the spirit crane beside her that was using its wings to disperse the fire. Because its feathers were incomplete, it was covered in dust. The female immortal said hatefully again, "It's all that bad guy's fault. If he didn't forcefully snatch away your spirit saliva, how could this cauldron of pills be so dangerous? It's a pity that I've been collecting spirit herbs for 3 years just to refine this batch of dispersion pills. This concerns my future achievements. I've heard that the Mystic Doors Orthodox sect gathers chi to refine talismans to achieve magical power. It's incomparably pure, unlike the heterodox sects like us, who either consume talisman water, gather evil chi, or consume elixirs to cultivate a heterogeneous magical power. I've seen the bad guy's cultivation method for the past few days, and it's indeed vast and pure. It can connect with the 9 heavens chi, and the talisman seed can form 1,000 kinds of supernatural powers. It's a pity that when I entered Tao, I had to search for yellow paper and cinnabar. I used all my effort to beg someone to draw a basic talisman, and it took me 2 years to turn the talisman into a seed, forming the first magical power in the talisman seed. After that, I had to train my chi and polish it painstakingly. I don't know how many twists and turns I've gone through to get to where I am today. It's also because the first magical power was mixed with other people's magical power. To refine a cauldron of dispersion pills, you need to purify your basic magical power. You can only get 1 cauldron of medicinal herbs after gathering herbs for 3 years. But someone snatched away the most important spirit crane's saliva. Why did you go and provoke that bad guy? Female immortal Meng thought of the pleasant surprise when she found the spirit crane's saliva and said sadly, Chin Ong retracted the magical power that was refined into the sun essence. After these days of hard training, the celestial river's magical power had become more vast and pure. From the original 20 to 30 celestial river's shadow, it had now become a mighty celestial river with 3,000 magical power. It was released every day and night to refine the sun essence and moon essence twice, benefiting countless living beings on the mountain. His external technique was perfected day by day, and he was now worthy of the name of the orthodox mystic door. After the celestial river's magical power broke through to 3,000, it was as thick as a real river. When Chun'ong trained every day, the water vapor supply of Qixia Mountain was gradually running out. If Chun'ong didn't want to deplete the water vapor of this mountain and cause a great sin, it would be best for him to move to a place that was full of water vapor to train. These days, his magical power passed through the stratosphere and intercepted the water vapor that was carried by the 9-heaven strong wind, and it was gradually running out. There were 2 paths that the celestial river's magical power could take. One was the water primordial celestial river, which was characterized by its rich magical power that was endless like the celestial river. The other path was to purify the 7 great true water and refine it into the celestial river. It would transform the 3,000 Gui water celestial river's magical power into Taiyin true water, Tianyi true water, first Yuan heavy water, Xianming true water, and celestial river's weak water. It had endless uses, and it could be turned into a source of life to nourish the primordial spirit. Of course, it would be best to take both paths. One was to take in too much water vapor, and other than the 4 ocean eyes, there was no other place that could provide so much water vapor until his magical power was complete. The other path would take a long time. It would be best to travel around the great rivers, go to the moon to extract Taiyin true water, North Pole to extract Xianming true water, deep in the ocean to extract Tianyi true water, and extract celestial river's weak water from the spiritual celestial realm and the human world's strong wind layer. Otherwise, it would take thousands of years of hard work. No matter which path he took, it was impossible for Chun'ong to stay on Qixia Mountain anymore. However, he had not encountered a bottleneck in his experiment, and he did not feel that he was going to break through any magical power. Therefore, he was still anxiously experimenting on the mountain. After Chun'ong sorted out the progress of today's research, he saw the sloppy monk, Jingming, walking towards him. With a pinch of his fingers, he knew the reason for his visit. He smiled and said, "Jingming, why do you have to do this? If you want to save her, you can do it yourself. Why do you have to drag me along?" Jingming smiled bitterly and said, "That child is stubborn and lost her temperament for a moment. I've been friends with her for decades, and it's not good for me to see her destroy her cauldron and pill. I don't know how many years I've wasted. I'm a follower of Buddhism, and my method is incompatible with hers. I still need fellow Taoist Qing's help to save her from this calamity. Monk, you're going to owe me karma." Chun'ong sighed and said, "Bodhisattva fears karma and mortals fear karma. Monk, something that even Bodhisattva fears. Yet you're rushing up." Jingming put his palms together and said, "I know that the cause of making friends is not evil. Good karma and good karma, even a monk can do it." Chun'ong only shook his head. Suddenly, he raised his head in surprise to look at the sky not far from Qixia Monastery. When he heard the crane chime beside his ear, Jingming revealed a smile and said, "Fellow Taoist previously said that the karma has not arrived. Now, the karma has already dared to come up." Chapter 415. Genius 1 Second, remember if you want to go? Talk about the internet, providing you with exciting novels to read. Chun'ong might be talking about the cause and effect, but he did not really care about these things. He was just too lazy to care about them. Other than the cause and effect caused by a spirit crane, he and Taoist Meng did not have much interaction. If the spirit crane was in trouble, he might have a reason to help. However, Taoist Meng was courting death, so why should he care about it? He did not expect the spirit crane to know that it needed to repay its kindness and came to disturb him. Since Jingming was here, he could not ignore it. The white crane folded its wings and landed in front of Chinong. It lowered its head and folded its wings. Even the bright red crown on its head became dimmer. A few drops of tears the size of broad beans flowed out of its eyes as it wailed. Its feathers had not grown yet, so it went to Chinong to please him. It used its beak to gently pick up the corner of Chunang's clothes and carefully pulled it a few times. It relied on the fact that it was a beast, so no one would care about it. It tried to please Chinong in every way possible and refused to let him go. Jingming, who was standing at the side, said in support, "This spirit crane also knows how to repay its master's kindness by coming here to beg for mercy. Since it has already admitted defeat, don't be calculative about how it bullied your red drill snake." "Of course I won't be calculative with it," Chinong sneered. "But monk, you have to know that if I intervene this time, someone will definitely die." Taoist Meng's spiritual sense was clouded due to the impending doom. That's why he did such a stupid thing. If I intervene, someone will definitely die. The karma will be huge in the future, and you won't be able to escape from it. Monk, although Fairy Meng has entered the unorthodox sect, she has never committed any evil deeds. On the contrary, she has many good deeds. It's better for me to save her than to let the two evil creatures on the mountain benefit, Jingming said with a smile. When Chenong heard what he said, he activated his Xian Qi and started to calculate the karma of Fairy Meng's tribulation. It was her own stupidity. She just had to use spiritual medicine to refine pills to break through her bottleneck. She did not know that the bottleneck of mixed mana was a karma tribulation during cultivation. It was a punishment for her greed for taking shortcuts when she entered Tao. She used someone else's hands to build her foundation. This tribulation could only be overcome with 10 times the amount of hard work. However, she became infatuated and thought that she could overcome this tribulation by refining the dispersion pill. They thought that the painstaking work of gathering medicinal herbs and asking for the prescription of elixirs during alchemy could make up for the negligence and laziness of entering the path of Tao. However, they were just rogue cultivators who did not have an inheritance. How could they know that the spirit medicine she used was the essence of nature, the spirit of all living things? It was the spirit bestowed upon them by heaven and earth, the fate bestowed upon all living things. If they were to be cut off by her, they would only be filled with a murderous aura and would never be able to make up for the slightest bit of hard cultivation. Just look at the cultivators of Amei and Qingqing sects. Which of them would dare to indiscriminately pluck spirit herbs to improve their own cultivation? It was a spirit nurtured by the heavens and the earth, and killing and injuring others would be taboo by the heavens and the earth, apart from obtaining it through luck and karma. Who would dare to plunder it indiscriminately? Only the spirit herbs cultivated by their own cultivators did not have such karma and could be used to refine elixirs. Or the spiritual fields cultivated by cultivators like Xiankong Island could be harvested by others. The square inch was the source of living water and endless supply. In other words, it was scientific development and sustainable development. There was a limit to the opportunities of heaven and earth that cultivators strived for. Due to the lack of luck, lack of external cultivation, and shallow karma, the doom would definitely come early. These rare opportunities in heaven and earth were really like those in some worlds where the way of heaven did not show up and the rules were crude and primitive. Spiritual medicines and heaven materials could be harvested indiscriminately, and the geographical location and the world's spiritual chi resources would be exhausted, making the cultivation environment worse with each generation. That female deity, Meng, did not have the right intention when she was going through the trial. She forced herself to pluck spirit herbs that were not fated to be with her. She had already sowed the seeds of death and forced her own internal tribulation to turn into an external tribulation, which was 10 times scarier. Moreover, she had even started to refine pills in order to seek for creation. She had also triggered the pill trial, which was combined with her own internal tribulation, the external tribulation of spirit herbs, and the tribulation of the completion of the pill. She was afraid that a wisp of her fragrant soul would be in danger of reincarnation. If she did not have a good friend and fellow Taoist like Jingming to save her, she would be ignorant for the rest of her life, and it would be difficult for her to have the fate to cultivate again. Chun-Ong calculated her doom and thought about how to overcome it. The simplest way was to kill all the heretical cultivators who interfered with her external tribulation, then help her to refine the pill and overcome the difficulty of her cultivation. However, that would be going against the heavenly Tao. Not only would he have to waste a lot of external cultivation, he would also be tainted with the karma of the heretical cultivators. In the future, when the tribulation came, there would be a few more friends of the heretical cultivators coming to find her. The most common method used by the seniors of the righteous path should be to first give her a few magic treasures to help her overcome the difficulties and then stay out of it. When she dealt with those heretical cultivators and broke through the tribulation, she would then be slowly trained so that she would know that she could not simply pick the elixirs and magic treasures and pills at will. However, neither of the two methods was in line with Chun-Ang's intention. The first method was fine if he did it once or twice, but if he did it too many times, his identity as a master of the righteous path would not be stable. Not only would the heavenly Tao be a taboo, but his own fruit of Tao would also deviate to the heretical path, just like the sage nun who was still trapped in the pond of elusive ripples. Although the second method was impartial and could wait for the exhausted to be exhausted, he could still earn some external cultivation. However, Chun-Ong did not come to this world to ascend to the heaven realm and obtain a high-grade immortal fruit of Tao. That was the pursuit of the cultivators in this world. If they wanted to earn a high-grade immortal fruit of Tao, they needed to have sufficient cultivation qualified and perfect external cultivation qualified. Only then could they ascend to become an immortal and become a high-grade immortal among the 36 immortals, promoted to a leader of the corresponding grade. But what about Chun-Ong? He came to this world to study and search for the master god space. The leaders of other companies would personally go undercover, learn advanced experience, get hold of customer information, and at the same time catch the undercover of another company. Chun-Ong slowly figured out most of the situation of female immortal Ming's external tribulation. After including it in his calculations, he took out a short feather from his sleeve, which was similar to the feather-long sword that Wang Ming had stolen. When the white crane saw the feather that was as long as a palm, its eyes brightened. It eagerly jumped up to Chun-Ong and looked at him eagerly, whining about its own feather in distress. Chun-Ong gently brushed the feather with the feather and sent it flying dozens of feet away. The white crane continued to fly back in a hurry, looking at the feather with even more anticipation. Its eyes did not move even once. Chun-Ong looked at its behavior and found it funny. He threw the feather into the air, and with the point of his right hand, he injected a stream of mana into it. The mana of the heavenly river entered the feather, making the soft white feather look like jade. The feather floated down from the air and landed on the white crane's right wing, becoming a part of the remaining feather. Chun-Ong smiled and said, "You can go back first. My life-saving feather can save you once at a critical moment. This time, you still need your master to wake up to this tribulation. Monk Jingming and I can at most save her from death. If she wants to break through the tribulation, she still needs to rely on herself." Chun-Ong and Jingming looked at each other and smiled. Then they drove the white crane back to the mountain. Chapter 416. Chun-Ong gave the white crane a feather and returned to his daily practice of collecting the sun essence in the morning and refining the moon essence at night. After half a month, Chun-Ong not only polished the celestial river Dharma power more and more profound, but also secretly thought that there were some twists and turns in Immortal Ming's tribulation. When facing those heretical cultivators, he had to have a few more methods to deal with them. Therefore, he wanted to practice the everlasting lamp flame to be more magical, so that when he fought he would not have a suitable magic weapon and lose the face of the orthodox mystic door. which Orthodox mystic Dor sect didn't have magic weapons and flying swords. Even if they were not as rich as a Mace sect, their juniors all had rare treasures and ancient treasures. They couldn't be empty-handed like drunken Taoist, who only had a flying sword that he had painstakingly refined himself. And Chun'ong didn't even have a flying sword. He only had a little lamp flame, which was even worse. The everlasting lamp flame was the first magic weapon he refined after he descended. The material was not very special. It was just an ordinary oil lamp that was worshipped with sandalwood oil for 300 years. Compared with the spiritual fire and immortal fire, its nature was not good. It was not as good as the golden crow divine fire in the pond of illusionary ripples, and it was not as good as the Tai Ching Tusita fire on the Qianling lamp in Li Yingqiong's purple jade mansion, Great Void Temple. Even though Chun'ang's method was magical and refined the true fire of the sun, laying the foundation of the true fire of Samadhi in the future, its nature was too poor. Even if it achieved Samadhi, it was far inferior to the 7 heavenly treasures in Li Yingqiong's hands in the future. Now, the everlasting lamp flame was not yet mature, not to mention harming and refining people. Even the true fire of the sun in the flame was still shallow. Its power was not even as good as the divine thunder of fire formed by pure true fire of the sun. However, it was quite useful in refining demons and exorcising evil spirits. When fighting against enemies, it was not a convenient magic weapon. Now, Chun'ong had 2 choices: either give up this treasure and refine a killing magic weapon, or destroy the foundation of this treasure and refine the true fire of Samadhi into the treasure of the true fire of the sun. When I first refined this artifact, I didn't put too much effort into it. I just regarded it as a joint effort to help me understand the process of refining artifacts in this world. It can be considered a tool for study and research. Now that I have already deduced the relevant method to prove the Tao with treasures, why don't I refine a related magic treasure? Thinking up to here, Chun'ong was slightly moved. However, female immortal Meng's tribulation was approaching. There was no more time for him to refine a new magic treasure. Chun'ong had no choice but to refine a few more restrictions, increasing the power of the everlasting lamp flame by 2 levels. To Dharma treasures, the essence of spirituality was like the material of the engine, and the restrictions were the structure of the engine. Now, the everlasting lamp flame could not withstand the 7 restrictions that Chun'ong had refined. In the future, it could only be upgraded after refining enough true fire of the sun. After preparing the Dharma treasures, Chun'ong suddenly had an idea. He called Monk Jingming, and the 2 of them flew towards the back mountain of Xixia. When they saw that female immortal Meng lived near the sunset cave of Fengxiang Peak, Chun'ong pulled Jingming and landed. The 2 of them stepped on a huge rock that protruded from the cliff. Behind them was a waterfall that fell from a high place. It was about 100 feet tall. Chun'ong waved his hand and released a heavenly river Dharma power to fuse with the waterfall. Then he raised his hand and separated the waterfall, revealing a dry stone platform inside. Chun'ong and Jingming looked at each other and smiled. When they saw 2 grayish-green rays of light coming from afar, they hid behind the waterfall. They were 2 cultivators who did not look like good people. One of them had red and long eyebrows, and the other was bald. He only had a circle of long hair around his head, but there was nothing in the middle of his head. To put it nicely, they looked strange. But when it was used on these 2 people, it could only be said that they had strange shapes and were born deformed. They had to thank their parents for not dying as monkeys when they were born. The bald one suddenly said, "Lu Tang, did you find out that little Miss Meng really doesn't have any good friends to save her?" The one with red eyebrows, who was replaced by Lu Tang, smiled strangely and nodded. "It's also because she's fated to have me. I found out that she was asking for the recipe of the dispersion pill. I've been paying attention to her every day for the past few months. She started to open the furnace 3 months ago, and today happens to be the day that the pill is formed. She worked hard for 3 months and consumed a lot of her Dharma power. Today, her spirit is already exhausted. We should get both the person and the pill. Good brother, you've made the most contribution. I'll give you little Miss Ming's first reward, and I'll just eat some soup. The bald one laughed strangely. The two of them laughed strangely for a while, and Chunong, who was next door, felt his hands itch. He wished he could use the celestial river's Dharma power to make them pay. The laughter was really too wretched, and it reminded him of a coquettish night cat. Luckily, the two of them knew that their laughter was not pleasant, so they stopped after a few laughs. Lu Tang said solemnly, "There's only one person that we have to be careful of, and that's Monk Jingming, who lives at the foot of Tiger Mountain. Monk Jingming is the only righteous person that little Miss Meng knows. If he interferes, we have to think of a way to delay him until he can't help us." Monk Jingming's voice came into Chinang's ears. The two of them are famous demons nearby. They're also known as the mountain-absorbing ghosts. One of them is the red-browed ghost Lu Tang, and the other is the bald ghost Nalan. They usually do many evil things, and I've long wanted to get rid of them. However, their doom is near, and it's not good to do anything about it. If we let them escape, I'm afraid we'll have to kill more people. With Fairy Meng's Dharma power, she was not afraid of the two demons, and they did not dare to provoke her on normal days. However, she was blinded by greed and made the dispersion pill. After 3 months of hard work, she was already exhausted and was no match for the two of them. Moreover, her doom was near, and the most important spiritual vigor of a cultivator could not be triggered. She did not know that she was in the midst of a doom, and the situation had already worsened to the most dangerous point. If her good friend Jingming did not save her, she might not be able to escape from the doom. When a cultivator faced a doom, the first thing that would happen would be to confuse their own destiny, and they would not be able to predict their own destiny. On the other hand, the enemy's external doom would be able to predict their own destiny. The heavenly Tao was not on one side, and it was very inconvenient. Even if one's Dharma power was higher, one would still die from the doom. This time, the mountain-absorbing ghost's Dharma power was not higher than Fairy Meng's, but they could predict the day of her forming the pill. The bald ghost said, "I know that Jingming too, it's not difficult to lure him away. There are 2 Taoists in the temple, one old and one young. I'll go and capture them and lure him to save them. He's a guest in the temple, so it's not good for him to not save them. If he dares to not save them, I'll kill the young Taoist, and then he'll have to rush over. You take the opportunity to control little Miss Meng." Chen On did not expect that they would plot against K2, and he was angry and amused at the same time. Jingming, who was beside him, gasped and tried hard to hold back his laughter. Half of it was because he was shocked by their viciousness, and the other half was because he was teasing Chinong. Chapter 417. Jingming, the monk, had planned to get rid of these 2 ghosts for many years. He was very familiar with their background. Not to mention their cultivation base and magic power, he even knew how many items they had in their family. He explained to Chinong, "The cultivation base of these 2 ghosts is similar. They are both Yin spirits who have not gotten rid of their physical orifices. They also have unorthodox magic power, which is far from the orthodox Taoism. However, the red-browed ghost, Lu Tonglian, has a rather vicious magic weapon. You have to be careful. The methods of cultivation of Taoism were complicated. Other than the orthodox mystic door, most of the unorthodox practitioners accidentally obtained the inheritance of their predecessors. They then deceived others to learn something to supplement their own inheritance. There were also some witches and sorcerers who were in between human methods and unorthodox spells. It was extremely difficult to sort out the system. If the cultivation levels of the orthodox mystic door were divided into 3 categories, there were Qi cultivation, Yin spirit, and Yang spirit. This was probably because most of the cultivators started with Qi cultivation and then went through a tribulation when they got out of their body. If their thoughts were not destroyed by the yin wind and yin qi, they would not be afraid of yin qi and would not be able to condense well. They could be called yin spirit. The yin spirit was purified by pure yang. After losing a bit of pure yin, it could travel around and drive things. If one went through a tribulation, his primordial spirit would leave his body or condense into a baby that had substance or gather and disperse at will. He would no longer need his own body orifices. There were also many ways for individual immortals. For example, the blissful Jingshu child. His primordial spirit roamed the universe with the body of a child. His mana was close to that of a celestial being. His mana was far stronger than others. There was also an individual immortal who used the yin qi as the shell of his primordial spirit. He was killed by a junior from a Mei sect. The difference in their supernatural powers could not be calculated. The sword immortals in this world were mostly individual immortals. However, Buddhism and demonic sect had another system of inheritance, especially Buddhism. Because of their special cultivation system, they vowed to deliver all living beings from suffering when they entered the mortal world. They were not like Taoism cultivators who focused on ascension. Therefore, there were quite a few old monsters in the mortal world with immeasurable potential. As for the demon sect, they were plagued by evildoers. In response to the jealousy of the heavens, there were also a few old demons who did not come out into the world. The tribulation of ascension was immeasurable. Even if they walked into the world, they would be punished by the heavens. They hid in the deepest part of this world and did not dare to come out easily. As for the primordial mutants, extraterrestrial demons, and immortals from the upper realm, there were many of them, and no one could come to a conclusion. Of course, Qin Ong had reincarnated in the other world. His cultivation base and magic power were not measured in this world. From Monk Jing Ming's point of view, he had just touched the threshold of an itinerant immortal. For a righteous cultivator who had only reincarnated 3 months ago, it was naturally terrifying. It also confirmed that Qin Ong was a cultivator with a great background in his previous life. The mountain-absorbing ghosts were only cultivators who could barely become yin spirits. In addition, the magic power of the unorthodox cultivators was much weaker than that of the righteous cultivators. For Qin Ong, it was naturally easy for him, and Jingming was not worried. However, magic power and cultivation base were only one of the factors. When cultivators fought and talked about swords, they mainly relied on the sharpness of their magic treasures and flying swords. Many unorthodox cultivators had evil thoughts and refined many evil magic weapons. For example, it was difficult for a child to defend against a dagger. If they were not careful, even if their magic power was twice as high as his, they would still fall into his trap. There were many dangers. Therefore, Jing Ming told Qin Ong about the flying swords and magic weapons of the mountain-absorbing ghosts. The most difficult to deal with was an evil magic weapon refined by the red-browed ghost, Lu Tang, called the red-browed bug. Lu Tang was born with red eyebrows. When he heard that the senior of the unorthodox sect, Madame Fox, had refined the white-browed needle, which was refined by her own long eyebrows, he became obsessed and wanted to refine a red-browed needle. If he really succeeded in refining the needle, Madame Fox Bao Xiang would have come to kill this B***th who had evil thoughts. But what could he do? He used unorthodox magic to pluck the blood of many people's hearts and created a lot of sins. Unfortunately, his magic was evil, so he did not refine it properly. Instead, he refined 2 freaks which attached themselves to his head and sucked his blood, turning him into a living skeleton that did not look like a human, but more like a ghost. Instead, he was happy and treated the 2 blood eyebrows as the most precious treasure of his life. Because they sucked blood like living things, they were called red-browed bugs. When they were used, they were like 2 bloodlines that drilled into the bones and heart. They could destroy a cultivator's protective vital qi and enter the flesh and blood to circulate, sucking the blood, flesh, and bone marrow clean. They were very evil. Jing Ming reminded Qin Ong a lot and even took out some ointment that he had painstakingly refined. was something that he had painstakingly refined with his family's fruits. It could prevent the red-browed bugs from escaping. Naturally, Chinong did not need it, so he declined. Jingming sighed and said, "The red-browed bugs are a pair of evil creatures. I'm sure that even if I kill the two ghosts, I can't stop the evil creatures from escaping. Instead, because there's no one to restrain them, they will kill more people and kill more people. Therefore, I've been enduring these two evils, waiting for me to refine the purple gold alms bowl that can restrain the red-browed bugs. Then I'll make them pay. But man proposes, God disposes. This time, you have the demon-refining spiritual flame in your hands, so there's a good chance that you can refine this evil creature, so I can't hold back." Jingming shook his head and said, "This ointment has a strange smell. The red-browed bugs hate this smell, so it's difficult for them to get close to you. However, if you don't get close, you won't be able to use your demon-refining spiritual flame. If you don't use it, you have a 90% chance of refining it, but it will cause you to face many unexpected risks. It's my fault." Jingming put his palms together and closed his eyes to think for a long time before he opened his eyes and said, "I'll use the blood of the golden body to draw 3 talismans on your chest. I can guarantee that you won't have to worry. 3 talismans." Chin-Ong shook his head and said with a smile, "1 talisman will take you 30 years of hard work. 3 talismans will take you half a 60-year cycle's worth of power. Do you think I don't know?" Chin-Ong flicked his finger and lit up the eternal lamp flame. Under the celestial river's mana, a river of spiritual fire was ignited, and it flowed around him like water. Looking at Jingming's inexplicable persistence in the righteous path, he suddenly recalled some scenes in his memory. There were those who swore to spread the medical path in the smiling, proud world, those who taught the chivalrous path in the Star Wars world, and those who led the army to suppress the law and order. These memories turned into a small flame in his heart and burned quietly. "I don't need these things." Chin-Ong raised his head and said, his eyes were sparkling, "It's just a sword to eliminate evil and eliminate evil. Monk, if you let me do this, your years of hard work will be in vain. If you manage to cultivate the purple gold alms bowl and kill these two evils, you'll accumulate 30,000 external merits and have a chance to ascend. Are you really going to let me do it?" Jingming put his palms together and chanted, "Once good thoughts come together, it will be true. Thousands of good deeds are not as good as a thought." "All right, then I'll bring his head to see," Chin-Ong said with a long laugh. With a leap, he turned into a long rainbow and headed to Dusk Monastery. A glazed sun and moon slowly appeared behind Jingming's head. As he sat down, the circle of light suddenly shrouded the entire Fengshan Peak. From the foot of the mountain to the sunset cave where Fairy Meng lived in seclusion, Buddha's light shone brightly. In this way, no matter what demons came to attack, Jingming could protect Fairy Meng with just a thought. Chapter 418. Chin-Eng's conveyance light was extremely fast. In a flash, he had already stepped on the bluestone slabs of Shi Xia Temple's backyard. Red-browed, ghost Lu Tang was looking for him everywhere. A black cloud wrapped around him and stirred up the front yard. Because the important places were all sealed by Chin-Eng's mana, he attacked from outside the restriction. He rubbed his hands and shot out many balls of poisonous fire, burning and wearing them down. He didn't see Chin-Eng's conveyance light, but when Chin-Ong landed and came out of the backyard, he noticed something. "Let me ask you, are you seeking death?" Chin-Ong sneered. Red-browed ghost Lu Tang saw him appear and was overjoyed. "I was looking for you, but I didn't expect you to walk right into my trap." Then he heard Chin-Ong shout and laugh. "Young man, you're so arrogant. I don't know how much that monk Jingming taught you, but you dare to show off in front of me." He was afraid that the flying sword would hurt Chin-Eng's life, so he couldn't threaten Jingming. Therefore, he mixed his mana together and turned it into a big, greenish-gray hand. Pressing down on Chin-Ong, Chin-Ong stretched out his hand and pointed, and a Milky Way appeared. The mana of the Milky Way was powerful and heavy. Chin Ran didn't need to use many magical effects. It rushed down and easily broke through red-browed Ghost's mana hand and protective True Chi. If one's body was hit by the Milky Way manifested by mana, it wouldn't be much lighter than the impact of the Nine Heavens waterfall. It would be easy for one's bones and flesh to turn into mud. If red-browed Ghost didn't sacrifice his mana to create a protective talisman, he would probably be dead. However, after his mana hand was destroyed, it automatically recovered to protect his body, barely saving his life. He escaped along the impact of the Milky Way. Although he was slightly injured, he managed to escape from the Milky Way's mana. After this, he no longer dared to look down on Chenong. He used one of the flying swords that he had cultivated, and a green sword ray flew out from the back of his head. This sword ray was not of the orthodox path, and its nature was heterogeneous, and it was not very sharp. However, the people of the unorthodox path had their own ways, such as mixing poison or asking for evil spirits to be sealed in the sword ray, and it was still quite lethal. Red-browed, Ghost Lu Tang's flying sword had been refined with miasma. Once it was used, it carried an incomparably fishy stench. Anyone who smelled it would feel dizzy and slow down, allowing him to take the opportunity to slash it. However, Chenong had always been more vicious than others. If it weren't for his identity as a righteous sword immortal, he would probably have raised his hand and shot out a bloody light, turning it into a blood god and eating him, leaving only a piece of human skin. Red-browed, Ghost thought that he was safe, so he held a handful of poisonous sand and waited at the side. If Chenong really had a way to break the flying sword, the moment he let his guard down would be the best time for Lu Tang to shoot out the poisonous sand. In the face of the stinky flying sword, Chenong just rubbed his hands and sprinkled out a little eternal lamp flame. Under the circulation of the Milky Way's mana, it turned into a burning Milky Way, trapping the flying sword in the river. Under the burning of the demon refinement lamp flame, the sword light of the flying sword was severely damaged. The stinky miasma on the surface was burned clean, and the sword light was charred black and fell to the ground. Lu Tang's flying sword's spirituality was severely damaged. He could not care less about the pain. He sprinkled out a handful of poisonous sand and was about to snatch the flying sword on the ground. Unexpectedly, the fire of the alchemist demon was so ruthless in restraining the evil magic. The flying sword that still had a trace of spirituality was burned by the fire, leaving only a broken body like a piece of scrap iron. When the poisonous sand was sprinkled into Chin Ang's protective river of fire, there was only a series of thunderous explosions, and it was broken. Lu Tang could not save him in time. He shouted in pain, "Little B asterisk star die!" He could not care less about snatching Chin Ong away and delaying Jingming's grand plan. His two red eyebrows turned even redder as he became agitated. It was because Lu Tang was so angry that his blood surged, and the two red-browed insects enjoyed it. His eyebrows wriggled like insects. As Lu Tang chanted, they turned into two blood-red threads and shot out. The red-browed insects were as thin as silk, but they were also abnormally fast. When they passed through Chin Ang's protective spirit flames, they only wriggled a little and burned some black gas. The two blood-red threads wriggled twice and crawled through Chen Ang's long river magic power, heading for his body. When Lu Tang saw this, he felt relieved. He believed that Chenong would not be able to escape this calamity. He thought to himself, "This little B asterisk starred has such a vicious true fire. If I didn't have other tricks up my sleeve, I wouldn't have been able to escape his poison." However, since he allowed the red-browed insects to break his protective spell, he won't be able to escape the pain of the red-browed insects drilling into his heart. The red-browed insects are wrapped in a filthy blood-red light that can lock onto his Een spirit. When the time comes, I'll make him suffer the pain of having his heart and bones corroded for 7 days. I'll make him die a horrible death to vent the hatred in my heart. Just as he was gnashing his teeth, Chin Ong laughed happily and said, I finally lured it out. With a swing of his hand, he released the heavenly river magic power that had been refined with the true Een water. The red-browed insects were enveloped by this extremely cold magic power and froze in midair. He casually pointed at the long river outside him, and the burning celestial river turned into a huge hand, grabbing onto Lu Tang in an instant. With a burst of spiritual fire, the impure magic power and the various sinister things on his body melted away. If I didn't want you to taste the pain of the red-browed insects, why would I put up with you for so long? Chinong said with a smile. Lu Tang was so scared that his extremely ugly face shrunk into a ball. Before he could beg for mercy, Chinong shot 2 red-browed insects into his heart. The only reason Chinong had been entangled with him for so long was to study the red-browed insects. Capturing him would be a good material. He had no other use, so why would he keep him? The red-browed insects drilled back into Lu Tang's body. Initially, he was overjoyed, thinking that he could escape from Chinang's hands with the help of the red-browed insects. Unexpectedly, the red-browed insects entered his heart and were stimulated by the hot blood. They woke up from the stiffness and became so ferocious that even he couldn't control them. They tore at his heart meridians and drilled into his bones. Lu Tang's face shrunk into a ball the size of a fist, and he gritted his teeth in pain. He wanted to howl, but his mouth was sealed by Chinong. He rolled on the ground for the time it took for a few incense sticks to burn. His body, which was originally as big as an old ape, shrunk to the size of a child. The rest of his flesh and blood were eaten by the red-browed insects, and the pain was unparalleled. Lu Tang finally learned the bitter consequences of letting people bite him. In the end, when the insects drilled into his head and sucked out his brain juice, he revealed a smile of relief. In the end, the 2 red-browed insects ate up Lu Tang's flesh and blood and drilled out of his head. The 2 insects, which were originally the size of eyebrows, were now as thick as a child's arm. On their heads, without eyebrows and eyes, 2 human faces grew out. They twisted into a ball and squeaked. Chun-Ong identified them carefully, and the faces kept changing. From unfamiliar faces in pain, they changed one by one. Chun-Ong guessed that these might be people who had been released by the insects by Lu Tang. The last one that appeared was indeed Lu Tang's face. His face was the clearest, and it was fixed on the bodies of the 2 red-browed insects. So it's 2 demons. Chen-Ong shook his head and said, even if that red-browed ghost Lu Tang didn't die in my hands, he couldn't escape from you 2 evil creatures. He thought that you were insects raised by his eyebrows, but he didn't expect that you 2 demons had sneaked in. When you are mature, you will be the first to eat up the owner who fed you with essence and blood. You really brought this upon yourself. Chen-Ong shook his head and waved his hand to burn the 2 demons to death with the eternal lamp flame. Chapter 419. As soon as the red-browed ghost died, nothing was left except for his withered corpse. His unorthodox flying sword was refined by Chun-Ong into molten iron. The 2 red-browed bugs, which were transformed from devils, were also refined to death. Only a handful of poisonous sand was left, but Chin-Ong did not care about it at all. He was going to melt it with his corpse. In the end, only a bag of treasures was left, which was still somewhat valuable. The red-browed ghost was an unorthodox magic power, and the bag he refined was not big. It contained some gold and silver, as well as a cultivation method to supplement his family's cultivation. It seemed that most of the family's wealth was still left in their secluded cave abode. Chin-Ong pinched his fingers and calculated. Jingming was not finished yet. Besides, ever since Chin-Ong and Jingming calculated, the doom of the mountain-absorbing twin ghosts had been triggered in advance. Now that the red-browed ghost was dead, the bald ghost could not notice anything with the cover of the heavens design. Chin-Ong took out the cultivation method and slowly read it in his hand. This was the unique mental cultivation method of an unorthodox, loose immortal. It could be considered as having some skill, but it was incomplete. It seemed that Lu Tang did not obtain the second volume of this mental cultivation method, so he could only use the bits and pieces of other cultivation methods that he collected to fill in the gaps, turning a good, unorthodox, miscellaneous cultivation method into a body of evil mana. Judging from this mental cultivation method, this unorthodox master seemed to have a careless personality. Naturally, the cultivation method passed down by this kind of rogue cultivator senior would not be as orderly as the inheritance of the famous sects and sections. Instead, it would be more like personal cultivation notes, filled with the author's personal feelings, and even essays. The senior who had left the inheritance was even worse. He had mixed a large number of obscure and vague sentences and expressions into his cultivation method. It seemed that even his ability to express himself was problematic. He had even used the dialect of his hometown, and the words mixed with the local dialect took up a large portion of the space. The most troublesome thing was that this was a secret book handed down from the Tang dynasty. Many of the expressions contained ancient meanings. In addition, there was only half of the inheritance. Chun Ong could imagine Lu Tang's despair and madness when he read this book for a while. The intelligence of cultivators was not low. Even if a pig reached the itinerant immortal realm, it would still be a pig with cultivation. However, intelligence had nothing to do with the ability to express himself. A secret book written by a highly intelligent old Qin cultivator from Guangzhou in the dialect of the Tang dynasty was indeed no different from a heavenly book in the eyes of a Sichuan cultivator from the late Ming dynasty. This is a tragedy caused by the language barrier. Chun Ong looked at Lu Tang's annotation on the mental cultivation method. The confusion between the lines, a large number of fallacies and misunderstandings, together with the argot of the Taoist priests of the Tang dynasty, and the evolution of the characters and meanings in the historical process, all showed that this once naive cultivator had been hurt when he was trying to decipher this cultivation note. For a person like Chun Ong, who had 18 degrees in humanities, was proficient in ancient Chinese culture and the secret inheritance of Taoism, and had an amazing IQ, this kind of thing was naturally straightforward and easy to understand. He could even use his extraordinary knowledge to complete the second half of the secret script that was lost at the end. The mystery would only be greater than the original text. However, to the unorthodox sects that did not have any inheritance, this was an insurmountable moat. It seems that it is very difficult for a cultivator without inheritance in any world. Chun Ong sighed and said, "This is actually a clear cultivation method. If you encounter ancient characters or Tianfu tadpole script, dragon chapter, phoenix seal script, tortoise pattern, bird inscription, or oracle bone, I'm afraid you are blind. With such a low understanding, it is no wonder you have entered the unorthodox path." After reading this cultivation method, Chun Ong put it back into his 100 treasures pouch. He now realized why the orthodox mystic door had such high requirements for aptitude. You can't even understand the dragon chapter, phoenix seal script, tortoise pattern, bird inscription, and oracle bone, and you still want to cultivate Taoism? With such a low IQ, you might as well go down the mountain and become the champion. There were also a lot of Taoist books and mantras found by the red-browed ghost Lu Tang in the comments of the cultivation method. Most of them were incomplete and mixed with magic and miscellaneous cultivation. There were even some unorthodox spells in the human world, such as the soul altar and Juyu, which often required blood sacrifice of living souls. The most brilliant ones were just some of the scattered inheritance of the Wutai sect. It was a little more brilliant than the Taoist canon of Yang talisman and divine talisman scripture in the Taoist temple, but it was still unorthodox. Chun Ong closed his eyes to rest and released the power of the Milky Way above his head to refine the sun essence qi. At the same time, he pondered over the demon-breaking eternal lamp flame and continued to use his mana to refine it. The spiritual flame was tainted, but it became more spiritual. After being refined by Chun Ang's mana, its nature was enhanced. It seemed that there was a filthy stimulation that countered it, but it made its nature even more magical. For hours later, Chun-Ang's mind moved. The crane feather that Chin-Ong had refined in the Dawnfall cave dozens of miles away fell from the sky and killed the bald-haired ghost. At this moment, the bald-haired ghost had already broken the restriction and was preparing to commit murder. However, Monk Jingming was entangled by a cloud of black fog in the distance. Female Immortal Meng, whose vitality was greatly injured, was unable to resist. She closed her eyes and waited for death. The white crane's right wing feather beside her lit up slightly and floated into the air. It was driven by Chun-Ong, who was far away in the Dusk Perch Temple, and killed the villain instead. The mana that was attached to the feather was insufficient after killing the bald-haired ghost. It exploded into a pile of feathers, and the mana turned into a sword chi. It was invisible and colorless, and it secretly attacked the cloud of black fog, causing it to be severely injured. Jingming took the opportunity to suppress it, and he left after throwing a bronze ring. Chun-Ang's mind moved, and his body turned into a long rainbow. He stood at the entrance of the Dawnfall cave. To people like him, dozens of miles of mountain road was just a matter of a thought. Monk Jingming, who was far away, was also wrapped in a ball of glazed flame. He dashed in front of Chin-Ong. Jingming shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fortunately, fellow Taoist was prepared, or I would have suffered a huge loss. I only thought that this was young Lady Meng's predestined fate, but I didn't expect my predestined fate to be in it as well. I escaped the fire calamity of the sea-filling eye, but there was still this aftermath. I was entangled by my opponent and almost missed the important matter. Your opponent doesn't look like a good person. Chin-Ong smiled and said, "It just so happens that he was struck by my sword. He has my sword chi on him. Why don't I take the opportunity to kill my way over and help you get rid of a problem?" "You must not." Jingming smiled bitterly and rejected him. "Although my junior brother has taken the evil path, he has not done anything evil. I still want to work hard to enlighten him. You must not send him to reincarnate." While the two of them were talking, the owner of the Dawnfall cave finally packed up and rushed out. Chapter 420. At this point, female Immortal Meng could tell that the entrance of the cave was not a good place to talk, so she invited Chin-Ong and Jingming into the cave abode to talk. The Dawnfall cave was her private cave abode, and she had never invited anyone in before. When they entered the cave abode, it was a little messy, which made Meng Xiaoshang even more embarrassed. She apologized to the two of them with a red face and hurriedly cleaned up a stone room for receiving guests. The three of them sat down, and Meng Xiaoshang brewed tea for Chin-Ong and Jingming. Jingming took a sip of tea and suddenly shook his head with a smile. "Junior brother Chin, I've been staying in your Dawnfall monastery for over 20 years, but you and your disciple have never served me plain water. Miss Meng, on the other hand, always served me hot tea. You've been staying here for so long, but I've never seen you give me your salary. I can tell that you're a bad guest. You even want tea." Chin-Ong teased. Female Immortal Meng covered her mouth and laughed. The stiff atmosphere in the stone room finally relaxed a little. She knew that Jingming was helping her out of kindness, so she no longer hesitated and talked about her tribulation. She was actually not a pedantic person. She refused to accept Jingming's good intentions because she did not expect that her pill refinement would attract such a dangerous external tribulation. This time, it was thanks to Jingming and Chin-Ong that she managed to get out of the tribulation. She felt lingering fear and was deeply grateful to the two of them. "It's also because I was bewitched by the dispersing pill and almost disregarded everything. After Senior Chin took away He-Er's spirit crane's saliva, I lost my consciousness as a cultivator and fell into the tribulation. Speaking of which, I reap what I sow," Meng Xiaoshang sighed. "After going through so much trouble, you finally refined the dispersing pill. What are you going to do?" Jingming asked her. A hint of hesitation appeared on Meng Xiaoshang's face, and she fell into an extremely difficult struggle. She knew that Jingming's words had a deeper meaning, but she had worked so hard to refine a cauldron of pills and survived the external tribulation after going through so many twists and turns. Seeing that there was hope to further purify her foundation, she could not give up no matter what. It was only when she saw Chun Ang's faint smile and his clear eyes that she woke up as if cold water was poured on her head. He gritted his teeth and said decisively, "This pill isn't my fortune. Senior Jingming, please deal with it." Chun Ang and Jingming laughed when they saw her tense face. Apart from determination, there was also a hint of reluctance on her face. Jingming shook his head and said, "Lady Xiaoshang, although the dispersion pill is no longer entangled by the tribulations, it's just a side pill after all. Now that the orthodox Tao sect is here, why do you still want to give up what's near and seek what's far away?" He sighed and said, "The hidden danger of your magic power is because of your carelessness and shortcuts. Now that you're using this external object to go through the tribulation, there will be another tribulation. In this way, you've been using the most inferior methods in your cultivation journey. When would there be a positive outcome in the future? Don't you understand?" Meng Xiaoshang felt as though she was suddenly enlightened. When she saw Jingming's pained and concerned eyes, she suddenly had an idea. She kowtowed to Chenong and said, "Xiaoshang admires the orthodox Tao. Senior, please guide me so that I can break away from this side sect." Chenong raised his hand in the air. Meng Xiaoshang felt an invisible force supporting her, and she couldn't continue kowtowing. He thought to himself, "You're the one who delivered yourself to me." When he smelled the remnant pill qi in the stone room, he had an idea. He said to Meng Xiaoshang, "If you really have the intention, then bring me the cauldron that you used to refine pills." Meng Xiaoshang didn't understand, but she didn't dare to hesitate. She quickly took out the cauldron that contained the dispersion pill. It was a purple copper gourd cauldron. There was a pagoda statue on the lid, and there were 3 legs supporting it. It looked a little clumsy and fat. The lower half of the gourd was where the charcoal was burned, while the upper half of the gourd was where the pill room was. Chen Ong didn't need the charcoal, so he took out the eternal lamp flame that was used to refine demons and burned it in the lower half. At this moment, there were still dispersion pills in the cauldron. Meng Xiaoshang wanted to stop him, but she was pulled by Monk Jingming. Chen Ong pointed with his finger, and a stream of pill qi that wrapped around the dispersion pill rushed out from the top of the cauldron. Chen Ong took a sniff and said with a frown, 70% is a pill and 30% is poison. The fire is too rough, and there isn't enough nourishment. Are you hoping to use this pill to purify your magic power?" Meng Xiaoshang, who was ridiculed by Chen Ong, felt very ashamed. She twisted her fingers together and didn't dare to raise her head with a red face. There was bitterness in her heart, but she couldn't say it out loud. How can refining pills be so easy? Side sect itinerant cultivators have no one to ask for help. Occasionally, they would gather a cauldron of spirit herbs, but they treat it as important as their lives, and they don't dare to let others know about it. Let's not talk about how much the pills refined by other people will be deducted. Even if you manage to refine it, do you dare to eat it? Side sect, I don't know about other things, but I have as many things as I want to restrict and harm people. I don't know how many methods there are to refine 2 devils into the pill, poison it, and force you to work for him. If it's not a pill refined by oneself, who would dare to eat it? Chen Ong executed his celestial river magic power and refined the blazing fire in the cauldron like a long river. It lingered like water, slowly nourishing the medicinal efficacy and purifying the impurities within. The green fire seeped into the spirit pill and brought out many impurities. In a short while, the dispersion pill became smaller, and the fragrant pill qi became fainter and couldn't be smelled anymore. Meng Xiaoshang, who was at the side, was dumbfounded. She knew that her crude pill refining technique was unsightly in front of Chenong, looking at the spiritual fire under the cauldron. Meng Xiaoshang was even more astonished. She thought to herself, the orthodox mystic door is indeed extraordinary. Which one of us from the side sect can use such a spiritual fire to refine pills? I use charcoal to refine pills, and those from the side sect, who are more particular, would use their magic power to light up the fire. I thought that this was the most particular pill refining technique in the world. Now that I see the Tao sect's disciples using their spiritual fire, I finally know what luxury is. This is pill refining, but us? At most, we are just using fire to burn the medicinal herbs. She then saw how Chang'an controlled the fire. When it was warm, the fire would linger, and when it was intense, it would explode like thunder. In a small cauldron, he was able to use the spiritual fire to evolve a boundless world. In the end, the pill fell to the bottom of the cauldron with a thud. When the fire was perfect, Chang'an extracted it with his magic power. Meng Xiaoshang couldn't help but want to dig a hole in the ground. A bright dispersion pill floated in the air like a pearl. It was only the size of a pearl, and it didn't have a strong pill fragrance. However, Meng Xiaoshang took a look at it and felt that the magic power in her body had become purer. This pill was like a pearl surrounded by flowing water, and it showed the true meaning of perfection and purity. Is this pill formed? Meng Xiaoshang asked in a daze. This is only the first transformation, also known as the first transformation. The quality of the pill you refined is too low, and I can't make up for it. I can't retrieve the spiritual herbs that were wasted either. I don't dare to let anyone consume a pill of this quality. The pill poison hasn't been dissolved, so it can't be considered a good fortune. Pill refining is a matter of good fortune. To make up for the inadequacies of heaven and earth, with the wisdom of cultivators, one can create rare treasures that the heaven and earth don't have. Then there will be boundless results. Therefore, this pill can only be considered as the beginning. With it, as a primer and the good fortune of spiritual herbs, it will be the second transformation. Only then can it be considered pill. Qin said indifferently. Chapter 421. Jingming heard Qin Ang's explanation from the side. He was clear about some things, but there were some concepts that he had never heard of before. He was greatly touched after listening to it, so he patiently asked for guidance. Qin saw that Meng Xiaoshang was also confused, so he explained to them and said with a smile, refining a cauldron of pills destroys the spirit herbs that heaven and earth loves and consumes the fate of all living beings. Therefore, heaven and earth are jealous of it, and it consumes the fate of external cultivation. In the mystic door, when we refine pills, we either use external cultivation to offset it or suffer external calamity. But if we look at it from another perspective, all living beings need to consume the nourishment of heaven and earth. Why aren't heaven and earth jealous? I think it's because of the creation of heaven and earth. The virtue of heaven and earth creates, but doesn't possess. It provides for all living beings and treats them equally. How can heaven and earth not be jealous of us if we want to possess, plunder, and take the nourishment of all living beings to worship ourselves? Therefore, following the virtue of heaven and earth, we walk the path of creation and take the spirits of all living beings to create heaven and earth. By taking heaven and earth and using heaven and earth, we won't be limited by calamity and will receive feedback from heaven and earth instead. Master Jingming nodded as he listened. He exchanged glances with Meng Xiaoshang and was greatly touched. Meng Xiaoshang was puzzled. If the path of creation is used for heaven and earth, what can we cultivators get? If we return the pills we refine to heaven and earth, what can we get from the results of refining pills? Qin said with a smile, that will depend on the cultivator's wisdom. I'll teach you a method called Path of Interception. So this is the path of creation that junior brother Qin mentioned. It's indeed profound. Master Jingming sighed and said, it's a pity that people's hearts are blazing. Refining a flying sword in the unorthodox sect usually requires tens of thousands of kilograms of fine iron, and they have to use spirit herbs to wash it every month. Those who don't have enough cultivation will have to resort to special methods or use the blood of spirit birds and beasts to restrain the spirits and increase the spirituality of the flying sword. For example, the 100-spirit immortal slaying sword that sect master Wu Tai cultivates. You can either take the core elixir of an insect or a demonic beast that has cultivated successfully and use it to refine the edge of the sword to increase its power and add supernatural abilities. You can even summon the extraterrestrial demons to restrain the demons and e'en demons. Its power is generally unimaginable, just like the sky demon fairy slaying sword that the Wu Tai sect master practiced. There's even more. He used the blood of children to refine flying swords and Dharma treasures. He is truly a heinous person. The 9 soul sword and the nascent soul sword that he cultivated are things that we cannot tolerate, Jingming shouted fiercely. Even the fellow Taoists of a May Mountain. Ascetic Ditta has to gather the essence of the 5 metals in order to forge an invisible sword. He has to gather 3,600 types of spirit herbs. At the very least, he has to use several million kilograms of refined iron and 5 metals to forge the sword. No wonder all the seniors had to abandon their magic treasures before ascending, so as to avoid being implicated. It turns out that these worldly possessions are really a type of burden when it comes to ascending. Chinong smiled and said, "Of course, I'm not trying to make all of you be timid and lose the freedom of immortals. Instead, I'm trying to inspire all of you not to be limited by worldly possessions and to be able to take and let go. For example, you use the 5 metals to refine the purple gold alms bowl and prepare to use it to get rid of demons. You have the chivalrous spirit of our generation, which is admirable." Chunong nodded and smiled at Jingming. Then he turned to Meng Xiaoshang and said, "I'm not criticizing you for being greedy. I just want to take this opportunity to let you understand the way of choosing and letting go. I want you to understand the principle of our generation being good at using things, how to make use of them, and how to create the resources that the world provides for us." Upon hearing that, Meng Xiaoshang smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, do you know that ever since I asked for the dispersion pills recipe, I've treated it as my life's most precious treasure? There are more than hundreds of rogue cultivators in the unorthodox school who are also stuck with impure magical powers like me and can improve. Among the dozens of fellow Taoists in the unorthodox school that I know, none of them are not greedy. If it wasn't for the fact that I can only make 1 pill per furnace, I wouldn't have alienated them. How many of us cultivators in the unorthodox school can't even smell a pill's scent in our entire lives? Spirit pills are hard to come by, not to mention the recipe, just the various spiritual herbs that I used to refine the dispersion pill took me more than 10 years to gather. There are many rare varieties that I had to exchange with others. I worked so hard to gather a furnace of ingredients, and I was so cautious that I couldn't even wait for the fire to go wrong. How would I have the time to think about other things?" Meng Xiaoshang sighed and said, "If that wasn't the case, why would I be stuck with a furnace of pills? It's because this furnace of pills is really important to me, and I can't tolerate anything else." "Then are you still willing to give it up?" Jingming asked, "If we wait until Junior Brother Chin returns, the medicinal properties will be changed, and the dispersion pill will no longer be able to purify one's foundation magical power. Do you really want to give up after so many years of hard work? Now that this dispersion pill has been refined and purified by Junior Brother Chin, there won't be any future troubles. If you want it, I'll give up my pride and beg Junior Brother to give it to you." Looking at Jingming's sincere eyes, Meng Xiaoshang lowered her head and remained silent for a moment. Suddenly, she lifted her head and smiled sweetly. "Master Jingming, you're still trying to tease me." Xiaoshang already understood the logic that Senior said. Hard work will only be useful if the path of Tao is correct. If I deviate from the path early on, no matter how much hard work I put in, it'll be useless. I'm no longer willing to lose my way for the shortcut of the dispersion pill. All right. Jingming nodded. This Huandan still needs to be refined into a pill embryo, and then with the dispersion pill as the tip, it will be transformed into the second spirit-restoring pill. Chun Ong said to Meng Xiaoshang, "Refining pills is hard work. I'm still not good at controlling the fire, so I'll have to trouble Junior's sister to help me." Meng Xiaoshang didn't know if there were any inadequacies in Chun Ang's control of fire, which was like refining fire like water and creating 1,000 spiritual flames. But since Chun Ong had asked, of course, she didn't dare to decline. Chun Ong arranged a hard job. When Chun Ong was refining pills, she was in charge of shaking the elixir cauldron and using her own power to probe into the fire to refine the pills. A dispersion pill, which was thirsty for by the people of the unorthodox sect, was placed at the side. It was being dragged by a brocade tray, but none of the three of them had the time to take a look at it. They were all busy surrounding the elixir cauldron. Jingming was handling all kinds of spiritual herbs to prepare for Chenong, while Meng Xiaoshang was carrying the big gourd and using her own vital qi to shake it. The elixir qi in the elixir cauldron that had yet to disperse seeped into her mana, nourishing her mana and spirit. Chenong, on the other hand, was controlling a round of spiritual flames in the elixir cauldron to dissolve the medicinal liquid. Under the refinement of mana, the originally complicated medicinal properties of the spiritual herbs were slowly growing and purifying under the dual pressure of the spiritual flames and mana. Some of the complicated and subtle medicinal properties fell into the lower layer of the elixir cauldron to be prepared, while the required pure spiritual properties turned into qi of vitality and settled on the upper layer of the elixir cauldron. As stalks of spiritual herbs were thrown in, the spiritual herbs in the elixir cauldron gradually evolved into the origin of the qi of vitality of this world. Chapter 4:22. In the Shu Mountain world, the essence of mountains, rivers, trees, stones, birds, beasts, mortals, and cultivators was essence qi. It was just like how matter in the technological universe was made of particles. Chun Ong was conducting experiments to explore the nature and characteristics of this world's essence qi. He did not know what pill he was refining. He was only following the laws of the unseen world to match the objective truth of this world, or rather, the Tao. The medicinal properties were elixirs, the medicinal liquid was elixirs, and even the magic power that Meng Xiaoshang used to probe into the furnace was elixirs. Chun Ong knew the purpose of all these things, and he was trying to achieve it. For that lump of medicinal liquid, he was refining it, but for that lump of elemental energy, he was creating it. It was just like a scientist trying to solve an unknown problem. Before the answer came out, no one would have any results. A essence qi embryo was born. Chun Ong stretched out his hand and pointed. The dispersion pill that was placed at the side fell into the furnace and melted the pill embryo. The medicinal properties and spirit qi sank and began to fuse with the medicinal liquid, causing them to condense into pills. Meanwhile, a wisp of intangible and pure vital energy was refined from the pill and entered the vital energy embryo. For a month, Chun Ong collected the essence of the sun during the day and refined the essence of the moon at night. He released the heavenly river's dharma powers to collect all kinds of special essence qi in the world and threw them into the furnace. Other than the most widespread essence of the sun and moon, he also collected the essence of the geomagnetic field and the special essence qi in the 9 heavens, astral winds. He fused them into the furnace, which brought in Jingming and Meng Xiaoshang's horizons. They had never thought that refining pills could have such a magnificent imagination and creativity. Even if it was the orthodox mystic door, the pills they refined would at most collect the essence of the sun and moon and pay attention to the 4 seasons of the stars. There was no need to mention unorthodox methods that used humans as sacrifices to the furnace. Chenong was not refining a type of pill. Instead, he was talking about a kind of cultivation and creation. This kind of work was just like how scientists in the technological world use stem cells to create life. Chun Ong was also replicating the creation of this world's essence qi. Yin and Yang gave birth to all things The clean and turbid opened up heaven and earth, and the movement and stillness transformed the universe. Everything that happened within the pill furnace could be seen through the combination of yin and yang, the birth of life. It could also be seen through the process of a cultivator cultivating energy and transforming it into a nascent divinity. Cultivating energy was like refining pills, and refining pills was like giving birth to life. Even though Jingming and Meng Xiaochang could only see some superficial principles, it was enough for them to benefit immensely. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. On this day, a mysterious Dan Qi emerged from the pill furnace. The pure white Dan Qi floated above the furnace like an auspicious cloud. After a few hours, the Dan Qi auspicious cloud changed 5 colors in succession, from white to red, orange, cyan blue, purple, and finally back to white. It was fragrant and fragrant, making people feel refreshed when they smelled it. At that moment, the 3 of them knew that the cauldron of pills was about to be refined successfully. Even Chen Ong couldn't help but reveal a look of joy on his face. Meng Xiaoshang and Jingming couldn't take their eyes off it and were filled with anticipation. Meng Xiaoshang's spirit wasn't as exhausted as before. Instead, she was full of excitement, and she was in an unprecedented good state. Then Chen Ong said, "It's done." The auspicious cloud above the furnace slowly floated down and landed on the steps outside the Dawnfall Cave. It turned into a cloud mushroom, and the pure white stalk of the Lingji mushroom supported a cloud-like cover. When the sun shone on it, it produced many clouds and mist to cover it. Meng Xiaoshang was dumbfounded and speechless. This cloud mushroom had a strong fragrance that made one feel refreshed with just a sniff. The mushroom was plump and full of spirit qi. It could even produce clouds and mist, creating a magnificent scene of a sea of clouds. It was clearly a heavenly treasure that was at least 100 years old. It was a rare treasure that people without fortune wouldn't be able to find even after spending hundreds of years of hard work. She pressed the cloud mushroom in disbelief. The warm, jade-like touch on her hand made her believe that it was a real thing and not an illusion created by the pill qi during the refining process. Meng Xiaoshang turned around and saw that Chenong and Jingming were sitting there and looking at her with a faint smile. Meng Xiaoshang felt a little bashful under their gazes, and she couldn't help but blush slightly. She felt a little embarrassed and thought to herself, "I'm not knowledgeable and made a fool of myself." However, not only did the 2 seniors not remind me, but they even openly mocked me. It's not a good thing. Chunong saw through her embarrassment. He coughed slightly and said, "The fire in the furnace has dissipated. Let's open the furnace." It was as though the 2 of them didn't move because the furnace was still hot. Meng Xiaoshang pretended not to hear the falsehood in his words and said, "Let junior sister help." Chin Ong brushed his right hand on the furnace and tightened his magic power to avoid the furnace's lid. A celestial river probed downwards, and in just a short moment, dozens of elixirs that were sparkling and translucent like jade that were about the size of a pinky were rolled up. Every one of them was not inferior to the dispersion pill that Chanong had refined. Furthermore, they had different shapes, colors, and smells. There were actually many different types of elixirs. Chun Ong probed downwards with his magic power, and after 3 to 5 times, he finally rolled up all the elixirs in the furnace. Meng Xiaoshang roughly counted that there were about 200 elixirs. Compared to the result of using the same amount of herbs to refine an inferior-grade dispersion pill, she didn't know how ashamed she should be. She couldn't help but ask, "How can there be so many? Furthermore, these aren't the same type of elixirs. So how can I refine them all at once?" Chun Ong said with a smile, "The most important things in elixirs are their spirituality and medicinal properties. However, there are usually hundreds of different kinds of medicinal properties in a spiritual herb, and they're complicated and intertwined. Other than the one that cultivators need, the rest are treated as impurities and are burned away by true fire. Due to the corrosion of the fire and the lack of skill, the remaining medicinal properties are wasted. Now that I have refined the elixirs according to the pharmacology, I have used 10% of the medicinal properties of each spiritual herb, and I have combined them according to different requirements to refine dozens of elixirs in one furnace. My efficiency is a few hundred times higher than yours. There are hundreds of spiritual herbs, and there are at least thousands of medicinal properties. How is it possible for someone to completely grasp and refine them, and to even control the process of dozens of elixirs? Meng Xiaoshang had refined elixirs before, and she knew how unbelievable this was. She couldn't help but want to refute, but when she thought of the Lingji that was created, she became speechless. This kind of immortal-like creation mighty figure was the most shocking. Since this could be real, there was no need to fake the matter of refining dozens of elixirs in one furnace. Jingming took the jade bottle and divided the elixirs. He asked in puzzlement, "Junior brother Qin, when I helped you refine elixirs just now, I also sensed that creation. Now that the elixir liquid in the lower layer has condensed into a pill, what about the essence qi of the creation in the upper layer? That cloud Ganoderma is just a bit of impurities. Where did the true essence of creation go?" Chun Ong said with a smile, "That wisp of essence of creation escaped when I opened the furnace. Because it's the essence qi creation, it needs to be refined before it can shed its essence qi body and transform into a flesh and blood spirit embryo. It's afraid of the wind when it's first born, and its essence qi can't condense. It will dissipate when the wind blows, so it's still in this cave abode." Before he finished speaking, he saw the white crane that female immortal Meng was rearing flying over from next door in fear. It threw itself into Meng Xiaoshang's arms and squawked in fear. Monk Jingming went over to take a look and couldn't help but laugh out loud. It turned out that the spirit crane had actually given birth to a jade egg. The one that Meng Xiaoshang was rearing was a female crane, and because the essence qi of creation had entered it, it gave birth before it could become pregnant. To be continued. Chapter 4:23. When Meng Xiaoshang saw the jade egg that was laid by the love crane, she was shocked and ashamed. She had already entered Tao when she was still a virgin, and now she still had not lost her purine. Unlike those female cultivators in the side door, she had heard that only those who had not lost their pure yin and pure yang could achieve the best results in cultivation. Although she had entered the side door, she was also a person with ambition, so she refused to be a virgin. Now that he saw the female Yuning crane that he raised being possessed by creation, he was extremely terrified. Luckily, I had the crane to protect me. Without it, there would only be 2 seniors and me in this abode. I'm afraid. Meng Xiaoshang still felt guilty when she thought about it. She looked at Qinong with fear in her eyes and thought, "This senior is indeed very capable. Legend has it that the Fuxi Grandmaster was born from the essence of the Luai's Luais. He is like the Luai's grand deity. He can also take our virginity. The Luai's grand sage's footprints can create Fuxi. Senior Chen's pills can create living beings. They are all very scary people. Even if we cultivate for 10 lifetimes, we will not be able to catch up to them. I'm afraid that only the immortal ascending to the mortal world can compare to this level of pill concoction and creation. We, the miscellaneous cultivators of the unorthodox school, can't even be compared to him. What was I thinking? I'm not satisfied and still want to take him as my master. What if he wants me to give birth to a disciple for him?" When she thought of this, Meng Xiaoshang looked at Qinong with a strange gaze. Such creatures of nature are like grand ancestor Fuxi. They are the seeds of cultivation. They are blessed with great fortune and great fortune. Mortals can never compare to them. Even the cultivators who have been cultivating for many generations are inferior to them. If I were him, I would create 7 or 8 of them to inherit my own Tao. If I were to be his disciple, wouldn't I be given 6 or 7 spiritual embryos to become his disciple's nest of creation? Meng Xiaoshang shuddered at the thought of 6 or 7 sons of fortune jumping out from her stomach. She had given up on the idea of taking Qinong as her master and becoming a disciple of his Taoism. Seeing Jingming's reluctant look at the crane egg, Meng Xiaochang felt a barrier in her heart towards this old senior who had taken care of her since she was cultivating. Just as she was thinking about it, she heard Jingming begging Chinong, junior brother Chin, in the line of tranquil glaze, pharmacist Dharmakaya. Other than me, there is only one person who can bring the sect to greater heights. I feel like old friends at first sight with this egg, so please let it be my disciple. Chin Ong shook his head and said, "What's the use of Shi Xiang begging me? Although the crane was created through my hands, its foundation was the creation of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it was also created through Junior Marshal Sister Meng's spiritual crane. The former was fated to be blessed by heaven, while the latter had the crane as her mother. Why are you begging me instead of Junior Sister Meng?" Jingming turned around and asked Junior Sister Meng. Meng Xiaochang seemed to have just woken up from a dream, and then she was even more frightened. She thought, "I actually forgot about Senior Chen's good friend. If every good friend wants to ask him for a disciple, 6 or 7 may not be enough. My girl's delicate body, how can I withstand his ravaging?" Therefore, without even hearing what Reverend Jingming was asking, she shouted, "Don't!" Jingming heard her and sighed, "Fine. Since Junior Marshal Sister Meng favors him, I can't take away what you love." Jingming had a good temper and did not take it to heart. Meng Xiaochang came to her senses and realized that she had offended him. She quickly explained, "Master Jingming, I didn't mean that. It's just that I don't dare to make decisions for him. Although the crane was born from my spiritual crane, he has his own ideas in the future. Why not let him choose his own teacher when he is sensible?" Jingming said excitedly, "Is what Junior Marshal Sister Meng said true? I thought Junior Marshal Sister Meng wanted to stay and be the successor of your sect. In this case, if he wants to be a disciple of a monk in the future, I will not decline." The biggest obsession in Jingming's heart could be said to be his own inheritance. It was easy for a cultivator to get magic treasures, but difficult to find a good disciple. How many powerful people could not find a disciple with good temperament and aptitude? Immortal Ji Lu, Li Jingshu, was implicated and could not ascend for hundreds of years because he wrongly accepted a bad person. To a cultivator, the most important thing in the world besides the righteous path was the inheritance of the Tao. There were even many famous righteous sects and even devil sects that valued the inheritance more than their own lives. He Sheng was a natural-born itinerant immortal who was blessed by heaven and earth. He was blessed by heaven and earth. He was more precious than any number of magical treasures and grotto heavens. He was a true disciple whom they could entrust their inheritance to. Chun Ong created Crane Sheng with the creation of heaven and earth. Although his mind was not perfect, his Tao nature was unique and he was born with wisdom. In Taoism, he was comparable to the reincarnation of a banished immortal. In Buddhism, he was like the birth of a bodhisattva. What was more wonderful was that there was no karma entanglement. Moreover, He Shang was born with a body of vital qi. It was Chun Ang's creation of imitating the infant cultivation of an itinerant immortal. He was born with a body of vital qi, and with a little guidance, he could become an itinerant immortal. It was no wonder that even an open-minded person like Jingming could not help but steal a disciple. After Meng Xiaochang understood, she was slightly relieved. She knew that even Chenong could not cultivate a spirit like Crane Sheng, like how he laid an egg. She looked at Crane Sheng's jade egg again. It was crystal clear and natural. The more she looked at it, the more she liked it. There was also a sense of immaturity and naivety which aroused her maternal instinct. Crane Sheng is so cute, and he is born with the foundation of cultivation. Isn't he a child given to me by heaven? I swear that I will not lose my virginity. I don't have children in this life. Why don't I take him as my disciple and take care of him as my own? Crane Sheng and I are one, so there is no need to separate us. The more Meng Xiaochang looked at Crane Sheng, the more she loved him. If she did not promise Jingming, she would have regretted it. Jingming looked at her eyes and smiled bitterly. Junior Meng, you can't go back on your promise. Chen Ong sneered. You are a monk and you are still living in my temple. You don't even have a business. I have this Shixia temple and Junior Meng has the Shixia cave. If I give you my disciple, do you want him to wander around with you or live in a foreign place? Jingming gritted his teeth. All right, I will give it my all for this future disciple. I will go to the human world to raise money and build a few nunneries beside you. You have no reason to stop me, right? Chin Ong shook his head and said, Crane birth will take another 9 months to be born. Moreover, he looks like a baby. Us 2 men can't take care of him. Why don't we ask fellow Taoist Meng to raise him first, and then let him choose his own master? How about that? Jingming and Xiachang knew that this was the best arrangement. Hence, the 3 of them agreed on this. Meng Xiachang was disturbed by the series of events. Now that she was carrying Crane Sheng, she calmed down. She hummed the nursery rhyme that she learned when she was young. Her heart suddenly became gentle and steady. Crane Sheng also leaned against her. No matter if it was from the perspective of motherhood or the path of Tao, Crane Sheng was their unparalleled treasure. If Crane Sheng could achieve enlightenment in the future, they would be guided by him because of this karma. Their chances of achieving Tao in their next life would be more than 100 times greater. A disciple like Crane Sheng was the most precious treasure in any heterodox sect. He was the biggest reliance for achieving Tao in reincarnation. At this moment, Meng Xiachang was surprised to find out that she had already shed her impure mana. Under the influence of the crane, she had formed a pure foundation. At this moment, she finally understood Chen Ang's painstaking effort to transform her mana. She understood that her mana was tempered by the real fire and the opportunity to transform. She then bowed deeply to Chen Ong with gratitude. Chapter 4:24. Jingming pondered and was still worried that the disciple he had tricked with great difficulty would fly away. When he saw that Meng Xiashang was empty-handed and didn't have a suitable magic tool, he wanted to bribe her so that she wouldn't regret it in the future. Suddenly, he remembered that he had just taken a copper ring from the black cloud, so he took it out from his sleeve and said to Meng Xiashang, Junior Marshal Sister, please help me take care of my disciple. Since he's young and doesn't have a plaything, I took a 5-cloud copper ring from Junior Marshal Brother. Although it's not very powerful, its quality is very good. It's made of red copper and refined gold, and it's also a way to cultivate magic power. I made something for him. Junior Marshal Sister, please accept it. Although Jingming said that the 5-cloud copper ring was inconspicuous, it was actually a treasure of the unorthodox sect, and it was better than all the treasures Meng Xiashang had. Although it was a magic power of the unorthodox sect, it was one of the few magic treasures in the unorthodox sect that didn't harm people with insidious and evil methods. After practicing the 5-cloud forbidden technique, it would be very effective in protecting oneself. It was obtained by Junior Marshal Brother Jingming, painstakingly collecting the essence of 5 clouds and refining it into an ancient copper ring. Jingming's Junior Marshal Brothers, Tao came from him, so he naturally knew about the 5-cloud copper ring's forbidden technique, so he imparted it to Meng Xiashang. He only hoped that Hishang would remember his kindness for giving him this treasure and take the initiative. It was a pity that Jingming was an eminent monk with a good temperament, but he had to work hard for such a disciple. When Chenong saw this, he smiled and said, Jingming is really generous. All right, Hishang and I also have a good fate. Since Jingming is so generous, I can't be stingy. He took out the jade bottle that Jingming gave him, and inside it were all the elixirs he refined. Chin An divided it into 3 portions and gave one to Jingming and one to Meng Xiashang. Since you and Hishang came out of the same furnace, you guys also have a share of hard work, so I'll give you a portion. Hishang was born with a good fate, so he doesn't need to take elixirs as it'll be harmful. These elixirs are used to cure illnesses and save people, as well as to increase one's cultivation base and be reborn. If you guys travel the world and see someone with a serious illness or a poor family, you can save them. The rest can be used to enlighten those who are fated to do so, or to make friends with people of the same path. Meng Xiaoshang held onto those elixirs that she had begged for 100 times in the past. She had mixed feelings in her heart. To a rogue cultivator, Chen Eng's action was no different from a local tyrant giving away his property in Beijing's Second Ring Road. He was truly extravagant. If it wasn't for the fact that she was afraid that Chen Ong would take her as his disciple, Meng Xiaoshang would be very willing to get close to him. Chen Ong seemed to think it was not enough. He laughed and said, "Jingming monk is a lazybone. He gave you the 5 cloud rings, but forgot to erase the evil technique that his shitty was practicing. Even though it is also a proper unorthodox technique, you are a female immortal and a boy was born from a crane. How can you use this kind of black cloud and black fog to cover your body? Later, I'll help you refine it and create a 5-colored auspicious cloud that will give you the air of an immortal." Jingming monk was holding the bronze ring at the side. When he heard what Chinong said, he came back to his senses and smiled bitterly as he passed the bronze ring to Chinong, circulated the eternal bright, spiritual fire, and rolled it 3 times in the bronze ring to erase the magic power that he had refined. Then he released 5 black clouds and black fog to refine the clouds from formless to intangible, then to intangible and again to intangible. After doing this for 3 times, the clouds returned to their white color. Then he took the opportunity to collect the special vitality in the 9 heaven-strong wind and spent a day to refine 5 5-colored auspicious clouds before returning them to Meng Xiaoshang. He had already disturbed Meng Xiaoshang for too long. The 3 of them chatted and discussed some Dao techniques. Most of them were Chinong and Jingming's discussion, while Meng Xiaoshang listened quietly at the side. She had gained a lot. After all, she was a female Taoist priest, so Jingming and Chinong did not want to disturb her anymore, so they bade farewell. After returning to the Rosy Clouds Temple, Jingming practiced for a few days. Then he remembered that he had promised to build a few monasteries beside the Rosy Clouds Temple so that his disciple could have a place to stay. So he informed Chinong and prepared to go down the mountain to beg for alms. Chen Ong was busy with the progress of his research and experiments. He persuaded him to stay for a while and let him go down the mountain when he saw that things were not going well. Recently, he did not dare to refine his magic power. Otherwise, under the 3,000 miles of Milky Way, there would not be a trace of water vapor in the surrounding hundreds of miles. It would be worse than a drought demon. So he had to refine it a little. Although it was slow, it was still an improvement. Every day, besides refining the Taiying real water and using the Taiyang real fire to cultivate the origin of the everlasting lamp flame, he studied the rules of this world. On the other side, the stupid teenager Wang Ming, who had stolen the treasure, began his legend of wandering in Jianghu under the guidance of the primordial treasure fate creation boy. Walking in Jinling City, Wang Ming looked at the grayish-white top of the pedestrians' heads. Occasionally, there would be some red airflow. He asked in his mind in a low voice, "Fate creation boy, is this the fate?" You can be considered as half the host of the lotus seed of fate. Naturally, you have some magical powers. Yes, what you see is the fate that the lotus seed of fate has given you with the great magical power of the heaven sun's gaze at air. This world has been forged by the heavenly court. Everyone has fate and fate that determines their life destiny. The people on the street all have grayish-white fate. They work their whole lives and are like ants. The better ones have a trace of red chi. They have the fate to make a fortune in the officialdom. Look at your head. Wang Ming heard what it said and raised his head to look at himself. He only had 1 foot of red chi. He heard Fate Creation Boy say, 3 feet of red chi is the magistrate's fate. Because your family is rich, you, the only son, have 1 foot of red chi. However, compared to the green chi and purple chi of those who have a deep affinity to immortality, it is much worse. If you go to find the white sun diagram, you will be captured by the demons to practice magic. You will be seeking your own death." Wang Ming heard this and said fiercely, "How can this be? Am I not a 1 in a million cultivation genius? Why don't I have fate? Didn't the Taoist priest of Shi Xia Temple say that there was a divine light coming out of my head?" Fate Creation Boy sneered, "So that's how it is. Then who took away my fate?" Wang Ming shouted hysterically, "Do you think picking up the lotus seed of fate doesn't consume fate? To be able to pick me up, you have already exhausted all the fate of your ancestors and descendants. With me here, you are the most blessed person in the world. What else do you want?" Fate Creation Boy said. Only now did Wang Ming come to a sudden realization, and he said excitedly, "So that's how it is. I possess the lotus seed of fate, and I have more potential than anyone else in this world. So I exhausted my karmic luck. Karmic luck can restrain others, but it can't restrain me who possesses the lotus seed of fate. My life is up to me, not the heavens. I want to defy heaven and change my fate. Good spirit, this is the spirit that the master of Fate Creation Boy should have. That's right. As long as you listen to my guidance, you will definitely be able to defy heaven and change your fate. Not to mention the green chi and purple chi, even if it's 3,000 miles of purple chi. So what?" Fate Creation Boy encouraged him. Wang Ming made up his mind. Regardless of the strange looks from the people around him, he asked in his mind, "Then, Fate Creation Boy, how should I defy heaven and change my fate?" There are many ways for mortals to defy heaven and change their fate, such as feng shui, merit, reading books, and so on. But as the host of Fate Creation Boy, you don't have to think about anything else. You can go straight to the oldest and most terrifying path. Intercept fate, kill fate, end fate, and steal fate. Intercept the fate of the masses and offer it to you alone. Wang Ming's mind was in turmoil. He wished he could immediately seize other people's fate and replace them. Your uncle looked down on you and Li Ning ignored you. Now, something has happened to them. This is the turning point of Li Ning's and the others' karmic luck. There's multi-armed bear Mary Tai, who has committed all sorts of evil deeds. If you kill him right in front of Li Ning, you'll be able to steal a portion of their karmic luck, and you'll also be able to steal all of Mary Tai's karmic luck. Even if only 1% of his karmic luck remains, it'll still increase your karmic luck. Chapter 4:25. Wang Ming's blood was boiling, and he almost could not control himself. He wanted to go to Mao Tai and kill him with one strike, and then show his head to Li Ning and the others. But Fate Creation Boy mocked him. "If you go now, you will only be cut into two by Mao Tai, let alone surprise the 3 elites of Chilu. Don't forget, you are only a foot tall of red and white chi, and your martial arts are only third-rate. You can't even defeat Mao Tai, who is a second-rate character in the underworld, let alone Li Ning, who has entered the peerless realm of the human world." Wang Ming had long been trained by Fate Creation Boy to know the soft side and the hard side. Hearing this, he asked politely, "Fate Creation Boy, what should I do?" "Don't forget the other 2 things you stole from Shi Xia Temple. Although I can't help you embark on the celestial path, it's not difficult for me to teach you how to use these 2 magic weapons." Fate Creation Boy, or rather, a thought of Chinong, told him in a cold voice. "Right?" Wang Ming suddenly had an idea and took out the other 2 things from his bosom. The soft sword, which was made of a strange material and shaped like an enlarged feather, was tied to his waist. After it was untied, Wang Ming used his strength to urge it, and it straightened up like a real long sword. Fate Creation Boy explained, "This crane feather sword was made by a dissimulated person with the feather of a spiritual crane. It is as light as a feather in the hand, and its sharpness is even more extraordinary. Because of its strange material, the blade can be controlled by genuine chi, and it can be bent at will. It can be said to be a unique magic weapon that combines the usage of a long sword, a soft sword, and a long whip." "So strong?" Wang Ming asked doubtfully. "But I don't know the sword technique of the soft sword, so I can't use its power." Fate Creation Boy, or rather, Chinong, arranged such a weapon for him. Wang Ming had been possessed by the primordial treasure grandpa for a long time, so it was time for him to fulfill his responsibility as a lab rat. He should be a qualified lab rat for Chinong, using his soul and body to provide valuable experimental data. This will depend on the second magic treasure you stole. Fate Creation Boy said coldly. Wang Ming took out the black bead from his bosom. He looked at it, but could not find anything special about it. Then he heard Fate Creation Boy explain to him in a rigid and emotionless voice. This bead was originally a third-class magic weapon. It has a little effect. In your hands, even martial artists with strong, genuine qi can't be bewitched. But it just so happens that it can help you practice a kind of immortal magic that I know. You mean the cultivation method? Wang Ming asked excitedly. Dream on. Fate Creation Boy sneered. Even if I take out the simplest incantation in my mind, your fate will immediately dry up, and you will be struck to death by 5 thunders. This is just a common magic used by the immortals in the upper world to play tricks on the mortals and play with the world. Ah, Wang Ming was a little disappointed and showed it on his face. However, he heard Fate Creation Boy snort coldly in his mind. The magic I'm talking about is the magic used by the celestial immortals and bodhisattvas. How can the magic of the mortal world compare to it? Put away your imagination about the mortal magic of curses and refining corpses. Although what I've taught you is the most common magic of the heaven realm, it is still an immortal magic. There are countless magic in the mortal world. After you practice it, you don't need to care about any martial arts. Even if you are a sword immortal, you will be tricked if you are not careful. This magic is called the art of releasing insects. Since ancient times, the art of insects and venomous insects have been equally famous. But I don't know why in the world you live in, there is only the inheritance of the art of insects and no trace of the art of insects. This also means that you are the only person in this world who knows the inheritance of the art of insects. In Wang Ming's shallow impression, venomous insects were cultivated by poisonous and exotic insects. What was the difference? He asked doubtfully. What's the difference between the art of insects and the art of insects? Fate Creation Boy sneered and explained, the art of insects is a kind of existence refined by the art of insects and venomous insects. Insects, on the other hand, are a kind of impurities in the human body. They are also called spirit. They are not an existing substance, but something that exists in the form of qi. The most famous one should be the 3 corpses insects. The upper corpse is called Pengju, a good treasure. The middle corpse is called Pengzan, a good taste. The lower corpse is called Pengjiao. Moreover, the upper corpse resides in the brain, the middle corpse resides in the bright hull, and the lower corpse resides in the stomach. The 3 corpses often reside in the human body. They are formed by impurities and impurities. They are invisible and intangible, but they really exist. The so-called art of releasing insects is to refine the impurities of all living beings. Worship the insects in your body and refine them into something like a magic weapon. When needed, you can release them to harm people. This art of releasing insects can get rid of all the impurities in the body, making the body clean and free from impurities. It has the effect of longevity and good health. Externally, it can arouse all kinds of insects in other people's bodies and control their senses, emotions, and even their thoughts. After you have mastered it, you don't have to worry about those who practice martial arts. The 3 corpses insects are so terrifying. Wang Ming exclaimed, if I have mastered the 3 corpses insects, who in this world can stop me? How can it be so easy to cultivate the 3 corpses insects? Fate Creation Boy poured cold water on him. Don't forget, you are still a mortal's fate. It can't bear such a precious thing like the 3 corpses insects. If you can't change your fate, you can't do anything. You're born with a limited destiny. You can't cultivate the Tao or cultivate magic. With such a destiny, You'll be punished by the heavens if you practice magic. I taught you the insect release technique, which drained your destiny. If you don't cultivate the most basic part within 3 days, your destiny will collapse. You'll be implicated, and your family will be ruined. It'll be considered a light punishment. Boy, are you willing to gamble with your family's life for an unknown future, for a possible opportunity? Fate Creation Boy's voice was like a devil's, testing Wang Ming's conscience. Confusion, fear, hesitation. These emotions triggered the impurities in Wang Ming's heart, making him experience a torment that he had never experienced before. He had a deep understanding of the true feeling of the insects controlling his emotions and thoughts. Fate Creation Boy said to him, "Do you feel it? These are the insects in your body." Although in the beginning you can only refine some small insects like the sleeping insect, the body-fixing insect, the gluttonous insect, and the liquor insect in the future, these hesitations, indecisiveness, greed, and fear will all be your power. The fairy technique is not an ordinary dharma. It is extraordinary and surpasses all the inheritances of the human world. But it will consume your fate and cause you bad luck. Your family and friends will be implicated. If you can't kill Mao Tai within 3 days, your fate will backfire and your family will be ruined. As time passed, Wang Ming gradually overcame the uneasiness and fear in his heart. Finally, he made up his mind. He raised his head and said to Fate Creation Boy, "I will bear the responsibility for what I have done alone. Is there a way to cut ties with my parents and family so that my fate will not implicate my family?" Fate Creation Boy said, "Your decision is really beyond my expectations, but I still have to tell you there is. But do you know what price you have to pay?" Chapter 4:26. The basic settings are done. In the Shisha temple, Chenong was trying out the insect release technique. This technique was created based on the 2 demons who had transformed into red-browed worms, and by referring to various evil arts and even diabolism techniques. It was definitely a new technique, and Wang Ming was the first glorious experiment's guinea pig. The concept of a worm is a completely different form of a demon or a yin demon. The danger within it is unbelievably great. If you don't have fortune rivaling heaven, you will definitely end up with a demon possessing your body and a yin demon burning internally. In the future, Wang Ming's fate has already been determined. He will be nothing more than completing the various tasks assigned by Chenong. Of course, on the surface, the reason must be to intercept all kinds of luck, and at the same time, to provide Chenong with experimental data. After setting a detailed route for Wang Ming's future and paying attention to him at all times, Chenong no longer paid attention to this chess piece and threw him into the magnificent fate of his family and country at the end of the Ming dynasty. Wang Ming and his family were destined to sacrifice everything for the various experiments and purposes of Chenong. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chenong, the righteous sword immortal. It was all the fault of Fate Creation Boy. Kill Mao Tai first, then kill Zhang Li, colonist of Nanping, Wild Boarskin of North, first hero of the great Ming dynasty, and eternal red scarf Wang Ming. The people will miss you. Chenong left. Without Wang Ming, the guinea pig, this insect release technique, Chenong could at most push it to the first level, refining 2 sleeping worms and body-fixing worms, which could be used as 2 handy techniques. But with Wang Ming as a test subject, Chenong was confident that he could evolve the heavenly devil worm and the 3 corpse worm, which would be a different kind of mystery. After Wang Ming's matter was settled, Chin Ang's experiment and research came to an end. Now that he had nothing to do, he wanted to go down the mountain and travel. There were still nearly 20 years before the plot of Mount Shu began, and he could go anywhere in the world. There was no need to be trapped in Chisha Mountain. Besides, the celestial river's dharma power could not be improved due to the lack of water vapor. So Chin'an had to move to the big rivers and oceans to continue his cultivation. Liaodong was a suitable place with abundant rivers such as Liao River, Yalu River, Songhua River, and Heilongjiang. Besides, it was cold in winter, which was helpful for Qinong to refine the Xianming genuine water. Unfortunately, if Qinong had not taken the path of a devil, he would have moved there a long time ago. Every day, he would skin and extract the bones of 300 wild boars. Then he would refine his magic and devil treasures with demonic fire. In this way, there were not many suitable places. Besides the 3 rivers, 2 rivers, and 4 seas, there were only the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, Tian Shan, and Kunlun. After careful consideration, Qinong still felt that the South Sea was the most suitable, because the South Sea not only had the most famous abode of Mount Shu, the Purple Cloud Palace, but also had a large number of individual immortals. Whether it was killing for treasures or making friends for research, it was an extremely rare place. Moreover, it was the Great Voyage era in the West. Qinong was also very interested to see how these Western colonists opened the Great Voyage era in the sea, where there were endless sea monsters and giant beasts. After making up his mind, Qinong took his worldly belongings. Fortunately, he had a batch of gold and silver from the treasure pouch of the red-browed ghost Lu Tang. He could be considered extremely rich in the human world. Only the salt merchants in Yangzhou could be so extravagant as to have thousands of taels of gold and silver. They would definitely not be short of consumption on the road. He put the red serpent macho in his sleeve and sent a message with a spell to ask Meng Xiaoshang, who was on the mountain, to help look after the Xixia temple. Then he opened the door and went down the mountain. At this time, the world was beginning to show signs of chaos, but it was all the chaos in the north. Whether it was the wild boar skin or the rebel army and roving bandits, none of them had invaded the south. At the end of the Ming dynasty, the market culture and commodity economy had reached the peak of the classical society. Nanjing was even more prosperous. This was the first time that Qinong came into contact with it. Compared to the magnificence of the northern Song dynasty, it was a different feeling. Jinling was prosperous and Qinhuai was beautiful. Qinong was dressed as a Taoist priest, so he was not eye-catching. The Ming dynasty had strict control over the movement of people, but it was already the end of the dynasty. The commodity economy in the south of the Yangtze River was flourishing. The Yingtian prefecture was also known as Jinling. At this time, the Nanjing city was known by the common people. Every day, there would be a large number of people and vehicles entering and exiting the city. Qinong was among them. After showing his identity card to the guard at the city gate, he was easily led into the city. In terms of identity, Qinong was a Taoist priest with a clear background. He was also the master of the Xixia temple, which was officially recognized by the government. The Xixia temple was located near Nanjing city and was often known by people. It was the first place for scholars in Nanjing to admire maples. Otherwise, he would not have been targeted by scholars yet. In terms of identity, Qinong could freely walk around the whole Ming dynasty territory. He could also hang out in any legal Taoist temple in the world and receive courteous reception. There were a few Taoist temples in the vicinity of Jinling, but Qinong was not short of money, so he didn't want to disturb them. He planned to find an inn to stay at first, and then look for a boat to set sail tomorrow. Occasionally, he would see 1 or 2 burly men dressed in official uniforms. Qinong would show a nostalgic smile. He had founded 2 secret service agencies. In the past, he also had a group of men dressed in flying fish uniforms. They ran amok in the Song dynasty and the Tang dynasty. They were famous in Jianghu. When he saw the embroidered uniform guards, he felt extremely close to them. Qinong saw the embroidered uniform guards coming and going in a hurry. The passers-by on the street also looked frightened when they saw them. In the early Ming dynasty, the embroidered uniform guards were in charge of life and death. Passers-by did not dare to look at them directly. It was now the year of Chongzhen. Wei Zhongxian had long since settled accounts. The embroidered uniform guards were not as powerful as they used to be. It was very strange that there were still people who were afraid. He did not want to calculate, so he found a passerby and asked, "The embroidered uniform guards come and go in a hurry. I see that the passers-by are frightened. Did something big happen? The passerby saw that he did not know about the matter, so he patiently explained, I heard that the city has been haunted by evil spirits. There have been 3 or 4 families in the vicinity who have died miserably. I also heard that Mao Tai, a bandit on the river, has snuck into the city to pick flowers. They suspect that he is the culprit. Yingtian is the second capital of the Ming dynasty. How could such a terrible tragedy happen? The court has urged the embroidered uniform guards to look for news. They have already captured a number of foreigners and extorted money. What a coincidence, Chinong thought. Looks like Li Ning and Wang Ming have not succeeded. Mao Tai's fate is indeed not exhausted. He still could not be killed. He also asked. Those imperial bodyguards came and went in a hurry. Did they find another victim? I heard so. The passerby was frightened and said, That family only has a blind old woman. She actually met with misfortune. Mao Tai is indeed a great bandit. He is so cold and unafraid. Someone beside him interrupted. Not only that, it is said that the person who met with misfortune was an elementary scholar who was taking the imperial examinations alone. He died together with his page boy in the house. His appearance was not bad. It seems that Mao Tai is also a southern wind. After a while, Chinong heard many rumors about Mao Tai. From the blind old woman to the young page boy, there seemed to be nothing that Mao Tai was afraid of. He was not picky about age, gender, or even appearance. He could not help but sigh that Mao Tai really had a good appetite. Chapter 4:27. Chin-ong chatted with the passerby for a while and was too lazy to join in the fun. From what he knew, Mao Tai was most likely framed, and the real culprit was someone else. He heard from the passerby that there were a few reputable inns in Yingtian City. Just as he was about to rest, he felt a finger reach into the 100 treasures pouch tied around his waist. Oh, you're stealing from me. Chin Ang's right hand grasped the pulse of the third hand at lightning speed. Chin Ang's reaction couldn't be any faster. With a little bit of mana, his right index finger stretched out smoothly and placed on that hand's pulse. With a gentle push of his thumb, he clasped the back of that hand. He only felt that the hand that was clasped was as slippery as a loach. There was a thin layer of qi on the surface of the skin that was slippery to the touch. Chun-ong rubbed the Milky Way mana and turned it into an ice crystal shackle, locking the hand. At this moment, Chun-ong had already turned around and saw the appearance of the person. It was a cowardly old man in his 40s or 50s. He was very short, and his body was bent. He was only the size of a 10-year-old child. His Taoist robe was dirty beyond recognition, and the hair on his face was dirty and messy. He looked like a big monkey. The old man didn't panic or feel ashamed of being caught. He looked like a rascal and grinned at Chinong. He bowed to him and showed the ice crystal shackle on his hand. Fellow Taoists, greetings! The old monkey spent all his money in Qinhuai, and it's been 20 years since he had anything to eat. Please forgive me for offending fellow Taoist. When I turn around and steal a fat sheep, I'll invite fellow Taoists to have fun on the pleasure boat. Chan-ong looked at his lazy character, and he was annoyed and amused. He didn't expect there to be such a talented person among the cultivators. He was already an individual immortal, but he still went to steal money. He hung the 100 treasures pouch on his waist and didn't hide the things inside. As an individual immortal, he should have known that there was nothing useful for cultivators other than some gold and silver. In other words, this itinerant immortal who lived in the secular world had really come for the money. Fellow Taoist, why do you have to deceive me? Other than us cultivators, who else would carry several thousand taels of gold and silver on them? Chen-ong asked with a smile. Fellow Taoist, could it be that you saw that I'm rich and specifically came to look for me? The old man chuckled. The truth was self-evident. He begged for mercy. I had eyes but failed to recognize the true Buddha. I have nothing on me now, so I can't compensate you. Let me go first. I've already scouted the place last night and found a big fat sheep. When I'm done with this tonight, I'll invite fellow Taoists to have fun on the Qinhuai River. What do you think?" He raised the shackles on his right hand that were formed by the power of the Milky Way and said bitterly, "Why use the Tyne True water to lock me up?" It was extremely cold and soft, and it froze half of the old monkey's body. His eyebrows were covered in frost, and his two small eyes blinked, making him look rather pitiful. If it wasn't for the restriction of the Tyne Dharma power, how could it lock up a thief like you? Even though it's an unorthodox technique, it's still an expert who has inherited the true teachings of the great Tao. When Patriarch Kong Kong stole the golden pill from the Tai Ching house, no matter how many restrictions of earth, water, wind, and fire were able to trap him, he had already ascended during the Tang dynasty, and the descendants he left behind weren't as powerful as him. So how could they be restricted by ordinary means? Chinong said with a smile, "Only the Tyne Dharma power, soft and formless, and a single line of 1,000 miles, can lock down Kong Kong, Er's escaping technique." The old monkey sighed. "If the attack didn't hit, I'll leave immediately. My and Patriarch's faces have all been lost in the hands of you and Yang Yang. I'm proficient in many escaping techniques, such as sword escape, earth escape, borrowing wind escape, and cloud escape, but I'm only afraid of a few special kinds of magic power. This Tyne True water is one of the 3 softest kinds of magic power in the world, the natural nemesis of the old monkey." "Fine, I'm convinced." Seeing that the old monkey had admitted defeat, Chinong unlocked the absolute crystal locket for him. The two of them, standing on the street, had already attracted the attention of many people. If it wasn't for the fact that they were both dressed in Taoist robes, there would have been officials coming up to question them. Chinong brought the old monkey to find an inn, and along the way, an incident happened. Because the old monkey was too sloppy, if it wasn't for the fact that Chinong gave him an extra sum of money, the other party might not have been willing to let him in. Looking at the old monkey's shifty eyes, Chinong thought, "Thieves are the most petty. If it wasn't for me, the innkeeper of this inn would have been robbed not long ago." Chinong asked for a superior room and invited the old monkey up. Seeing that the old monkey was as skinny as a monkey, Chinong ordered a table of good dishes for him to eat. Unexpectedly, the old monkey swallowed his saliva and rejected. "Our patriarch has a rule. If you don't work for a day, you can't eat for a day. Because it's easy for us Taoists to earn money, if we don't use our skills to make a living, we'll inevitably be suspected of deceiving our masters and forgetting our ancestors." Chinong thought, "It's fine if others say this, and they can even get the praise of having a good sex style. But you bunch of thieves actually have so many stupid rules and insist on using your skills to make a living. Is this something to be proud of? May I know how I should address you, Taoist friend?" Chinong cupped his fists and asked. The old monkey revealed a mouthful of yellow teeth and smiled. "I don't dare to. I'm called Jianxi. Because stealing things needs to be done quietly, isn't it?" Chinong thought to himself. Although he was cursing in his heart, he said, "Fellow Taoist Jianxi, you are well informed in Tian City. Do you know who is the culprit behind the recent murders in the city?" When Jianxi heard this, he became spirited. The greasy look on his face disappeared, and he said in a serious tone, "Coincidentally, I know a thing or two about what Taoist friend is asking about. I went to visit the families of the victims and found some traces of spells. I also heard about some situations. In the first 2 cases, innocent girls were harvested and killed. As for the other 2 cases that happened recently, they had something to do with a nearby Dara temple. The elementary scholar who died in the house went to the temple to burn incense during the day. When he returned, he was silenced and killed. I suspect that there are some heretical people who are trying to practice heretical spells. When I was still on the Qinhuai River, I heard that the daughters of many good families had been kidnapped. At first, I thought it was because of the nunnery of the pugilistic world. Later on, I found out that it had something to do with the Dara temple." When Chenong heard this, he laughed coldly. If that's the case, then we can't let them live past tonight. Fellow Taoist friend, since you've investigated so thoroughly, it seems that you have the intention to get rid of evil. Do you dare to go with me? The old monkey laughed. Don't try to provoke me. The first thing that Kong or steals is human heads. I've long had the intention to steal their heads. I've been investigating for many days. Initially, I wanted to wait for the other 3 heroes of the pugilistic world to make their move. Then I'll follow behind and stealthily steal all the heads from their temple. Since fellow Taoist friend has no intention of letting them live past tonight, I'll go with you. Then fellow Taoist friend should go and work and eat your fill. Tonight, I'll wait for fellow Taoist friend. Chun Ong stood up to send the guest off. Just as he was about to leave, he asked, Fellow Taoist friend, what are the names of the 3 heroes of the pugilistic world that you mentioned earlier?